Morning everyone, my name's Julie Hurd. I'm the CCO for UK and Ireland for DB Schenker. I'd like to welcome you all today. The way that it's going to work is I'm going to be introducing our CEO, and then we have Robert Hardy here. So first of all, we will have a presentation for 1 hour approximately, and then we'll have a 15-minute coffee break. After that, there will be Q&A. So please, if you could, to make sure the flow goes well, if you could leave your questions until the Q&A. So this is the DB Schenker Brexit seminar, and we hope that you'll leave here today with more information about Brexit and some more real guidance about what you should be doing and what you should be preparing. So I'd like to introduce our CEO, Ray Hennessy.
Good morning, everybody, and hello. It's great to see so many Schenker customers in the room at the same time. Thank you for being customers at DB Schenker, and especially thank you for coming here today. We had some fears we might have an empty room, but it's great to see a full room, so thank you very much for coming. Today really is about guidance, and for all of us, and particularly you as our customers, to understand as much as we can learn about the requirements in a UK environment post-Brexit. And today is really about our partner and colleague Robert Hardy, who has really become an expert in this field and has spoken widely on the subject for many months, talking to us until around 11 and then taking questions after the coffee break. So I hope you find the morning informative, and I look forward to talking to you in the fringes of the meeting. And again, thanks very much for coming.
So okay, I'm mic'd up. Can you? Oh, bright lights, bright lights. God, I don't get a round of applause. God. Hey! Thank you. Good morning. Either I'm popular or the subject matter's popular, but I'm going to go with me for the time being, because it's important that I'm on top of my game for this. Thank you for coming. I've done a lot of this. I'll tell you why in a minute, but one of my objectives in all of these kind of seminars that we run is that you don't leave here with a list of things to worry about. You leave here with a list of things to do. We're not going to go over like, I'm not going to use the word strategy. If I do, throw something at me, because I just find that a bit of a buzzword at the moment, and it's like, you know, got a strategy this and strategy that, and none of that. It's going to be very practical, very on the ground, and very much, I think you'll find some of it will be simpler than you thought. Maybe if this message was put out a bit stronger by more people, then the fear factor might not have been quite so strong, and people would have planned sooner than now, really. So, let's cover it off. We have to do the legal bit first. You're being filmed. If you don't want to be filmed, there's a blackout area in the corner over there, which is full of people who obviously don't want to be filmed. Hello. These are the people who have said they're not here today, or whatever. But no, it's important that we do that for the GDPR point of view, is that it is being filmed. It's been live streamed, I understand. So, just so you know, you're famous. Okay, why do I stand here? What gives me the right to stand up here and talk to you about Brexit? Why do I know any more than you might know? Let me give you a little bit of background about me, because that might help. My original background, when I left school, I grew up in Dover, and when you grow up in Dover, you pretty much become a customs clearance agent. So I became a customs clearance agent. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I was actually quite good at it. Customs clearances. When I was at school, I remember I was good at physics and maths, and it's that usual thing, is when are you ever going to use that? Customs clearance is all about physics and maths. It's all about process and the logical flow of data, and why are certain things happening in certain ways. And part of the point of today really is I want to cover off why certain things happen and why certain things happen, and why that chain is important in the decision making that you're seeing coming out of government. Because certain things you'll look at and you think, why would they do that? You know? And I'm going to sort of give you some background to that so it makes a bit more sense. So, customs clearance, good at that. 1193 came along and there was no longer any more customs clearance, which was a bit of a shame, because, as I said, I was quite good at it. So then I went into transport and logistics, because it's kind of natural flow from there, and became sort of commercial director of Nagel UK, which is not Kuehne+Nagel, but Kraftwerke-Nagel, which is chilled and frozen groupage. They were fairly on their own in that market, and still are. So did well there, but it was actually exhausting. Was headhunted away by Eurotunnel and became a senior manager at Eurotunnel and later a commercial director of Eurotunnel Plus. That's an important aspect here because it's all about keeping traffic moving. And very much what I'm going to talk about today is it's all well and good from the import-entry point of view, the export-entry point of view, but what's going to happen at the border? How do I keep things moving? And you get quite a lot of people saying, well, what you need is AEO, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that, and you've got to get all this compliance piece. That's nice. Truck's still in Calais. So let's make sure we work on how do we keep the stuff moving and build it from there. Okay. I was headhunted away by P&O Ferries. A friend of mine said, actually, if you've ever been contacted by a headhunter, you end up sort of going thinking, geez, I've reached the top of my career. I've got headhunters chasing me down. And one of the entrepreneurs I worked with years ago said, no, if we want to get rid of somebody, we ring headhunters and get them to headhunt you. Oh, crikey. I had no idea. So there was me thinking I was doing well. If you were headhunted into your current role, sorry about that. So P&O Ferries, I was freight director of P&O Ferries, responsible for the North Sea, Short Sea and Western Channel, which I shut. But again, that was all about how do I keep trucks moving? And the interesting concept with that one was always, how do I maximise the capacity and how do I keep things, this is all a turn up and go, and this is part of Dover's problem, or Dover and Eurotunnel's problem, is that it's a turn up and go service. So you just hope not many people, or not too many people turn up at any one time, and that creates some management challenges in a customs environment now, because they are going to turn up in waves, and those waves have now got a disruptor in them, which is the customs process. So that's a very important point. 2012, having left customs clearance in 1193, in 2012 I actually came back to it because friends of mine took over part of the Port of Dover to turn it into a kind of a freight centre. And the Dover Harbour Board said, you can only have it if you also take on the customs terminal. Because in Dover Harbour Board's words, this is 2012, we don't really know what it is, and it doesn't seem to have any future. So we're going to give it to you. So they took it over in 2012 because the Harbour Board said it was dead in the water. Who knew there was a referendum coming? And I walked back into that business having been away for 20 years. It hadn't changed at all. I mean, honestly, I kind of came back slightly, not nervous, but sort of a slight trepidation, because I was thinking, well, okay, I knew it 20 years ago, but that was 20 years ago, Literally walked back into the office and learnt the customs processes in an hour. Nothing had changed. The staff were the same. And if I'm honest, I recognised some of the furniture, because things just hadn't moved on, and they still haven't. And in actual fact, somebody said to me, I was on LBC radio a while ago, and they said, well, this is an unprecedented event. I said, not really. We've actually been here before. I like to be a bit provocative because it gets the conversation going. But we have been here before. In 1193, when customs clearance for European goods ceased, that was known 2 years in advance. So and it was planned to the nth degree, because I suppose it was, all sides had a vested interest in that working. Now, what happened in that 2-year run-up was that the staff who were any good left because there was an end date on their career. So you were left with the not so good ones, in some cases, or just not enough, and yet the traffic was still flowing through. So we kind of had a bit of a Brexit issue 25 years ago. So we spoke to customs and said, we need to do something about this, because they've got the same issue, they were losing people too. And the solution was, we invented something called FLIC, Forwarders Local Import Control. Right now you can call that CFSP or TSP. So we invented those processes 25 years ago. We also looked for where in the UK did customs have additional resource, and where could we centralise these clearances. Salford Quays was the answer. Let's put everything in Salford Quays. 25 years later, Salford Quays is still the national clearance hub, and it's kind of the epicentre of most of these processes. This is what we did 25 years ago, and this is what's still valid today. So we have actually had a taste of this. There's 400 of these slides. We've not gone through the first one yet. Anyway. Right, then we had a Brexit referendum. Holy moly. I must admit, at the time the Brexit referendum was going through, I was at that point the vice chairman of the Dover Port Users Group. And we had a meeting a couple of days before, and I thought, this is close, you know. I mean, Dover Port was saying, nah, there's no way, you know, very bullish, there's no way the British people would vote for something so drastic as Brexit. But it looked close, it really did look close. 24th of June 2016, I woke up in the morning, saw the result, thought, happy days, I'm good at this stuff, and customs clearance is coming back. So I spoke to the wife and said, upgrade everything to 5-star, because we're going to be rich. And pretty much, I thought I'd sit back and watch what happened. And then I did watch what happened, and I heard more and more. I started shouting at the telly quite a bit and realising there was an awful lot of misinformation out there. I have to say some of the large consultancies were out there giving misinformation. I'll cover off some of that misinformation in a minute, and I just thought, I need to get involved. And then because I was working as part of a food distribution business, we kind of had to solve Brexit for ourselves, and that didn't take long. So I thought, well, actually, I need to talk to our customers now, and that led me to talking to sort of Tesco's and Aldi and sort of shaping them in the right position. And I thought, okay, now that a lot more people are asking me to do this, I better get more involved. So I did. That gave me a lot of media attention, which is nice at first, and then becomes an absolute pain when you look at your phone and you've got 50 voicemails and 30 of them are press. It's not just me, people in the customs clearance game are getting this kind of attention, and honestly it grinds you down. You do become a bit of a diva. Like the office rang me a while ago and said, BBC want to speak to you, and I realised I'd become a diva when I said regional or national. And when she said regional, I went, no, you're right. And it's got me in the Financial Times, New York Times, which I didn't even know about, in fairness, BBC News, Sky TV and LBC as well. Also creates a whole load of trolls that come out of the woodwork, particularly as I'm quite positive about Brexit. I didn't vote. I'm neither a Brexiteer nor a Remainer, because I've worked all over Europe, so I suppose I'm a Remainer. I'm a customs clearance expert, so I suppose I'm a Brexiteer. So I didn't vote at all, because I needed to vote for both, you know? So I thought, well, I will by not voting for either. But the moment you start being quite positive about Brexit, which is my job, is to find a way through this mess, then suddenly you're a Brexiteer and you get all this Remainer flack on you. I mean, some of the stuff I get is, quite strong, you know, but it is what it is. I'm also a registered expert with the EU Commission, which isn't quite as complicated as it sounds, but you can register if you've got sort of particular backgrounds, and then you give opinions on some of the processes which they're planning to put forward. Whether that has any great influence, I'd like to hope it does, but I'm not always that sure. You know? I then did some work with the Institute for Government on their Brexit and customs paper. I have to say, Institute for Government is one of the best sources of information on any of this. They seem to cut through it. They're very sensible. When they originally put out their customs paper, it was easily the best I'd read, because you tend to read it thinking, oh, hello, let's see what they've got wrong. Well, they didn't get a lot wrong, you know. And then they moved it on to the next level and asked me to get involved, and we came up with some plans. So I was very proud to be involved in that one. Intertrade Ireland, so I'm going to have a drink of water, bright light. Intertrade Ireland, I work closely with them. I'm a funded advisor through Intertrade Ireland. So they're operating a voucher scheme. So if you need help and assistance and you're based in Ireland, north or south, I have to say, then there is a voucher scheme on Intertrade Ireland called Start to Plan, and you complete that. I'm one of the service providers, and they pay for it, basically. Which a similar thing happens in Holland. Doesn't happen in the UK, which is quite nice. So the Dutch government will put between 2,000 and 5,000 euros into consultancy. Ireland will do the same, and the UK, who created this mess, don't do anything. Just thought I'd say. We also do a lot of work in the business before Brexit came along, because we weren't just sitting there waiting for Brexit, but we have a business where we work quite closely with Border Force. Our business specialises in cleaning up loads that have been contaminated by clandestine activity. And if it wasn't for Brexit, we'd be opening Calais now, and we still will be, but there's not enough time and hours in the day. We're opening up a site in Calais that does heart rate detection and what have you. So at the moment, that's done in Calais by French staff, but they're not very good at it, and I don't blame them. So we're offering it more as a commercial service. But we work closely with Border Force, Food Standards Agency, and the retailers. Phew, that's me. Okay, we're nearly there. We have a deal. How good's that? Theresa May comes running back saying, how wonderful is this? We've got a deal. Has a few holes in it. Well, one big hole, which is the backstop, which we'll cover in a moment. But nonetheless, we've got a deal. What happens now? This isn't my slide. This is Bloomberg's slide. I've just bastardized it slightly. Where'd that come from? And we've now got these choices where we have the vote in Parliament. We all know how that went. And now she's gone away to do Plan B, and the next vote is whenever the next vote is. It's probably going to go the same way. So we have a deal, is an option with an orderly exit, which would be nice. We have a no deal, which is a chaotic exit, potentially a general election if there's enough MPs to form a leading party, or a second referendum. Although the second referendum seems to have lost some traction, and I'm kind of glad it has, to be fair, because I think it's an inconvenience. We've got to make the best of what we've decided to do, and the second referendum piece is, there's no guarantee it would be a Remain. So we're just going to have a year more of rubbish and then come away going, yep, still leaving, what was the point of that? And we just created so much mess, we just want to get on with it, you know? We're at a situation at the moment when we're in the 88th minute of a match, we don't know who's winning, and we don't actually know what the rules are, and yet we're still in the 88th minute of that match, which is crazy. We just want some form of stability in there. But that's where we are at the moment. The one that isn't on there, which is gaining a bit of traction behind the scenes, is managed no deal, which is 29, and at the moment it's sort of more towards 70% no deal. But managed no deal says we leave on the 29th of March, no deal, but with an implementation period, because nobody's really as ready as they'd like to be, including me, because I just can't. There are certain customers I look at, I just think, I just can't get the approvals in time, so I'm just not ready. So a managed no deal where we actually leave, but the processes remain the same until the 1st of January, I think is very doable. I mean, that would get my vote tomorrow, because we can then move on. And it is gaining a bit of traction behind the scenes. One of the reasons why that's a good thing is that it's not an extension of Article 50. Article 50 would end and we would leave, but there would be this agreed period of implementation, meaning that they don't have to have Nigel Farage in the European Parliament, because we wouldn't take part in the European elections because we've left. Okay? So I can see that gaining some ground. But then again, who knows? We have to just go with the flow. There is still this revoke Article 50 button, although again, I mean, the guy in the Scottish Parliament got that agreed. I still think that is, there's a point where if it is going that wrong, these are the lifeboats on the Titanic. You know, you can't ignore it if it's going that wrong. But at the moment, it's not quite looking like the Titanic, you know, but it is there. And then a couple of weeks ago, we were suggesting Her Majesty might get involved, just to tell the children to stop misbehaving, basically. And then there was talk of her being evacuated. Oh, God, some of the stuff you read. What was the one I read a while ago? We're going to run out of lettuce, which is like devastating. But one of my clients is one of the largest lettuce producers in the UK. Like every McDonald's, it's their lettuce. And they import it from Spain until May, and then it goes into UK production because the UK crop is coming through. So if we're going to run out of lettuce, we're going to run out of it by May, because it comes from the UK for the next 6 months, and then it goes back to Spain again. So it's all this sensational stuff that comes through. But anyway, what's the stumbling block? That one. Is anyone in from Northern Ireland? Good, let's talk about the people from Northern Ireland. No, right, okay. It's been overly weaponised. The UK government haven't handled it very well. I don't think Leo Varadkar's handled it very well. I think the EU are playing it brilliantly. We'll see some numbers in a minute that shows we really are taking this to an extreme. But, okay, there was a point when the EU said, in order to have a backstop or whatever, then Northern Ireland would remain in the customs union and the single market. To which Theresa May rightly said, if they're in it, we're in it. And Barnier compromised to that position, and now we're saying, actually we don't like that position, but we asked for it. Okay? They suggested Northern Ireland only. We came back and said, it's everything or nothing, and they went, okay. And we went, we didn't really mean that. We were kind of hoping you'd say it wasn't that one. Do you know? So a bit awkward. It's not quite what it looks like. It is there as a safety net. I get it. I get why you need to have it. I also worry about some of the things that, once you're in it, how the hell do you get out of it? The other thing, that the irony of the whole piece is that Leo Varadkar and the EU have said we're not building a border. And the UK has said, well, we're not building a border. And we've got a system in place to confirm that there won't be a border. Well, who's building the bloody border? It's that you've got to that situation where if nobody's going to build it, what are we trying to avoid? Right, but in the backstop, Northern Ireland and GB, and we have to start using that kind of terminology, so we start talking about UK, and already now we're sparking DUP ears because we're talking about Northern Ireland and GB as two different things. It's absolutely fine in the Olympics, by the way, but it's not good when we're talking about countries. So, Northern Ireland and GB remain in a customs union. Northern Ireland also still remains in the single market. There is an absolute fundamental difference between the single market and the customs union. We're going to cover that in a bit more detail, but people tend to talk about them as though it's the single market and the customs union, like they are intrinsically linked. They're not. They are very separate pieces. The customs union doesn't solve a lot of problems, which I'm going to show you in a little while. The single market is a domestic market. The reason why we don't have paperwork is because we're in a single market, not because we're in a customs union. Okay? The customs union just sits alongside the single market. And in order to be a member of the single market, you have to sign up to the 4 freedoms of people, money, movement, and goods. People, money, services, and goods. And that's called EU membership. And we're definitely not doing that one. So NI would stay in the single market whilst we would be in the customs union. We can't leave that customs union until there's an agreement between the EU and the UK, and here's the stumbling block, so now we're locked in forever, apparently. I remember there was one part of the vote where somebody said, look, there's no way I can agree to this where we're locked into the EU forever. What I want is a second referendum, so we remain in the EU forever. Interesting argument. I get the point, it needs an end date. It kind of doesn't matter when that end date is. Like if everybody's saying, look, we will replace the need for a border in the island of Ireland with technology, and we're all sure that's possible. We'll put a date on it then. Nobody wants to build this thing, and everyone's sure they can find a solution. But put a date on it, because if you don't put a date on it, nobody will be motivated to find that solution. They'll just wobble on. I mean, we're not being that good with a date. So what would we like without a date? So I get the point. It needs a date. Anyway, enough about Ireland. Well, for a minute. Let's look at some trade, because this is quite a busy slide by the time it finishes, but it covers off an awful lot of the decision making that's going on in the background at the moment. So, what do we do? At the moment, we import from the EU 265 billion a year, which is not insignificant. We import from outside the EU 235 billion a year. We export to the EU 160 billion a year, and we export outside the EU more than that, 185 billion a year. Now, not a lot of people know that. They all think Europe's our biggest trading partner in both directions. It's not so. We export outside of the EU more than we export inside the EU. These are the growth figures compound over the last 7 years. The two areas that are growing are imports from the EU and exports outside the EU. I'm going to refer to them again in a minute. So the two growth areas are imports within the EU, or imports from the EU, and exports outside of the EU. That's Remain, that's Leave. That's what was driving some of the Leave voters. That's where we get more power to do more of those deals. That said, if we crash out, we lose half the deals that trade's based on, but maybe only temporarily. Now, the revenue which the UK derives from any of that business is only that one, which is duties and taxes and VAT at the point of importation on goods from non-EU. That figure, as Chief quite happily stood up and said, we provide the software that collects 34 billion a year in revenues based on importations. And you think, geez, that's a lot of money. And everyone started thinking, 34 billion a year. Right, we're talking about duty-free and everything? It's a lot of money. But that didn't make sense to me, so I kind of dug in. It didn't make sense with the figure that we were trading in. The figure was too high, basically. So when I looked at that 34 billion, 6 billion of it is excise duty and not particularly Brexit related. Excise duty is excise duty. You know, it's, there may be some increase because of Brexit, but it's not particularly embroiled in the Brexit piece. So you can almost take the 6 billion out of it. 25 billion of that 34 billion is VAT paid at the point of importation. So the government don't really get that money because it all becomes, you pay it, you put it on your input tax return, gets balanced off. So the estimate of that 25 billion in real terms is about 5 billion because of the quarterly VAT returns. And they gave that up in a heartbeat when they've said you can now go back to postponed VAT accounting. And when they've said we're going to have postponed VAT accounting for imports from the EU, in the event of a no deal, they also said, and all other imports too. So if you import anything from China, you'll be hoping for a no deal because you don't have to pay your VAT anymore at the point of importation. You just go into postponed VAT accounting, which is exactly what we had 30 years ago. Anyway, and what they also have in Holland, and what they don't have in Ireland, although the Irish have put a case to say we want to do that too, and at the moment, nobody's listening, but hey-ho. So 25 billion of that was VAT, and they've given that up. They've actually said, no, we're going to write that off. You'll pay your VAT through your VAT return. The duty, the actual duty, is 3 billion a year. So if we were to duty-free everything, we would be giving up 3 billion a year in income, which is the equivalent of 1.6% of the value of imports from non-EU. So if under these WTO MFNs, we're all getting used to these kind of terminologies, under WTO most favoured nation rules, if we duty-free one, we duty-free all. So therefore, if we duty-freed everything, we could be giving up the 3 billion that we currently get. Only thing is, we don't get it. Currently, that 3 billion goes to Brussels because the EU is based on a free circulation model, and in order for that free circulation model to work, the money has to be in the centre of the circle. The only part of that 3 billion that we retain is 20% to pay for the infrastructure to collect the 3 billion. Okay? So at the moment, the net income for the UK on all of that trade, on duty, is zero. Absolutely nothing. Keep that in mind, because that's driving some of their decisions. So when they put processes in place for Brexit and people go, yeah, but it will be possible to get through without paying the duty, they're kind of going, hey-ho, not lost anything, because we won't get it anyway. Okay? And there's a lot of these processes you look at today, what I'll show you today, that they're going to do at Dover, for example, where you look at them and think, that's crazy. And then my response is always, compared to today, it's no different. It actually doesn't create any difference. There's no control. There isn't today. Yeah? So if we fail to collect duty on a consignment that's coming in, we, as I'm being the customs officer here, the Treasury's lost nothing. Interestingly, if we applied WTO, the EU's WTO most favoured nation tariff to our imports, that 3 billion would read 14 billion. And it would all go in the Treasury. And that really wasn't their intention with Brexit, to create a £14 billion pot in Treasury. It was to save paying the EU, not to create a £14 billion pot, which the consumer will end up paying in most cases. So right now, our income from duty, zip. Remember those numbers, 265, 235, 160, 185. These are massive numbers. There was when we're talking billions, it's kind of billions, you know? What's a billion? We used to talk in millions when I was younger. And I remember years ago thinking, I need to get a sort of a view on what a million looks like. So I remember reading somewhere that there hadn't been a million days since Jesus Christ. And I thought, oh, okay, gives me some idea what a million looks like. And then somebody wrote the other day a piece about what a billion looks like. If you had a jar and every second you put a pound coin in it, in 11 days, you'd have £1 million. Sounds quite achievable. To get to a billion, same process, 31 years. So, for exactly the same process. A million is not just I'm sorry, a billion is not just a million with a different letter. It's 1,000 million. It's a lot of money. And we throw it around like it's nothing. But here I'm going to throw it around like it's nothing. 265, 235, 160, 185. Huge numbers. Let's look at Ireland. So, what is the trade on the island of Ireland? What is all this about? Why have we got so much grief with Ireland? There must be some massive trade figures that's actually driving it. North-south, 1 billion. South-north, 1.5 billion. Really? Remember there was a talk of the Irish border has been weaponised, which was an unfortunate use of words, but you get the idea. It has been overly stated in order to make a point, in order to put some blockers into the deal. I think those figures are rubbish. I think it's much higher than that. And in fact, Northern Ireland recently came out and said, actually our figures are 1.5 billion now. And then somebody else in the background kind of said, no, it's 4 billion. And what? The point in Ireland is that the border crossing, the road border between the north and the south, there are 4 million freight vehicles cross that border every year. What the hell are they carrying? About 250 quid's worth of goods. Because it doesn't make sense. The numbers don't add up. The reason why they don't add up is half of it's not reported. What should happen is when something goes up north to be bottled, that's an intrastat declaration. I've moved the stuff over the border, and now I've got an intrastat dispatch, and then I've got an intrastat arrival when it comes back. None of that happens. The stuff goes crisscross, crisscross, crisscross. When it's stopped, we'll do a declaration. And when it stops and it's in the country that it started in, no need to do a declaration. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just been driving around a bit. Okay? So half of it is not reported. And really this was our point when we were talking to government. We were saying, look, what goes on in the island of Ireland, let them get on with it. You know, if the product emanates from the island of Ireland, let them trade. Let them carry on as they do today. And even keep reverse charge on VAT. Just let the stuff flow. I mean, I've got some customers that bring cooking oil into Dublin. They then send it up to KFC in Strabane. KFC cook chicken with it. They then recover the oil, bring it back, pick the chicken out, turn it into biodiesel and send it back to Holland. Fantastic. A mountain of paperwork. Okay? For what, really? What happened? You know? So he was actually saying, well, how do I get around this? I said, just stop selling the oil to Strabane. He went, well, actually, it's part of our business. I said, well, stop selling it, rent it. Because you're not actually selling it, because you're going to get it back. So just rent them it. You know? Change the way you're doing transactions. But the point was, it's just all the paperwork's possible, but really, you know, nobody got hurt here, nobody's nicked anything. The trade figures are, you know, but they're already nicking it, to be fair, because those trade figures must be unreal. You know? There is a part, though, that is you know, so anything on the island of Ireland, crack on. All you've got to worry about is anything that arrives on the island of Ireland or leaves the island of Ireland. Now, if it leaves the island of Ireland and comes to the UK, we've got a process for that, we're ready for that. And if it arrives on the island of Ireland, there's a process for that too, although that's not mostly port clearance rather than any inland process. But we've got a process for that too. The problem is, where does that border take place? So the plan we've put up is that if you take, for example, Liverpool, Belfast, then and only this side of the water, you would have Irish and British customs side by side. So as the vehicle drives up towards Liverpool to get on the Belfast ferry, he either goes in the UK lane, straight through, or he goes in the Southern Ireland lane because he knows he's going to end up driving to Southern Ireland, and he does his Southern Ireland customs before he leaves the port of Liverpool. What's wrong with that? Don't see any point with that. Don't see any problem with that. You do that at airport every time. EU passports, non-EU passports. Does that confuse you anywhere? Did you get anything wrong? Did you think, I'm going to have a crack at the non-EU, see what happens? You go in the right lane. I remember years ago when I went to Bâle Airport. Has anyone ever been to Bâle Airport? You walk out of arrivals, and well, actually not quite out of arrivals yet, but there's 3 doors in front of you that says France, Germany, or Switzerland. You thought, geez, I'm not going to get this right. It's kind of, I had a meeting in Bâle in Switzerland, and I thought, that'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Sort of ringing the client, going, "I'm sorry, I'm late. I seem to be in the wrong country." You know, but it's, but you know, you cope. You do what you do, and the part with the juxtaposed border is we've said there is a border if you want a border, but if you don't need the border, don't go to the border. Don't see too much of an issue with that. And having said that, we're having to work with, well, we were working with the ERG on it, which sometimes is a bit of the enemy, but they were working on the alternative arrangement suggested by Sir Graham Brady as part of this Malthouse plan, but even that seemed to get dropped the other day, because Theresa May's still back on this bloody backstop thing and saying, I'll get them to weaken. Well, whatever. Plan for no deal. Right, now I'm off my Irish thing now. I'm off my Irish track. Let's stop talking about the poor Irish, because they're not poor at all. They just don't report it. WTO tariffs. You've all been told to look in the WTO tariff. It's all a bit of a disaster. Saw this advice a lot in the early stages. Classify your goods, look in the WTO tariff. That will tell you how bad it's going to be. So everybody did. I think Aldi did it, and they worked out it's going to cost them 140 million a year. There was one customer, it was lovely actually, he was bringing in kitchen equipment. And he said, yeah, we've had KPMG round, they've classified our goods, they've looked in the tariff, and worked out it's going to cost us 100 million. I went, oh, that's nice. So we need a deferment account for 100 million, or whatever, 20 million. But we can get that cheaper apparently with AEO. We can get a 70% reduction on the tariff, on the bond required for the deferment account, and that's going to save us a load of money. So they're doing our AEO for us. I said, oh, fantastic. How much are they charging for that? 55 grand. What? And they said, yeah, but look at what we're saving. I said, right, okay, now I'm going to show you what you're saving. It's complete rubbish. Because what they told you to do is classify your goods and look in the WTO tariff, the WTO tariff. There's 164 member countries of the WTO. We are one. We've been one since 1940. Somebody said the other day online, the UK have got to reapply to join the WTO. No, we haven't. Probably the same guy with the lettuce, you know. So there's 164 countries in the WTO. There is no WTO tariff. The WTO tariff does not exist. Go to the library, they won't have it. There are 163 WTO tariffs. All of them use the same basic HS codes and goods descriptions, but the right-hand column is the critical part, which is the duty rate, and that's unique to each of the 163 members. Why have I changed from 164 to 163? Because the book you're missing is that one. It's the one that hasn't yet been published, but is due out in days. Okay, days. We waited long enough for it. So the UK WTO tariff is not yet been published. The one people were looking in was that one. And even if you go on tradetariff.gov.uk, I think it is, and people are saying, I'm looking at the tariff. That's the EU WTO tariff. It's just got a front screen, which is the Britain on it. But it's the EU tariff. This is for imports into the EU from third countries. Imports into the EU from third countries. We are a third country importing from the EU. Why would we use their tariff? Now, somebody said at one of these seminars, because we've been doing them quite a while, said, yeah, but we feel like we need to look somewhere. I said, yeah, fair enough. But what you're doing at the moment is you've just planned a weekend in Paris, and you've gone to your travel agent and said, I need a map of Paris. It's going to be, can't wait, it's going to be fantastic. You've got a map of Paris. No, we're all out. We've got Milan, that'll do. I'll take the Milan one. That'll be just as good, at least I've got a map. Right? What good's that to anybody? It's no good to anybody at all. And everyone's looked at this worst case scenario. I'm going to look in that tariff. The EU tariff is designed, tariffs are not an exploitation tax, they're a protection tax. And the tariffs are written in there are to protect EU production. So we don't need to protect EU production. And we also don't want to pay more for stuff that the EU produces. A good example of that is grana Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese is protected. If you try and bring it into you try and bring Parmesan cheese into the EU, not that you can because of provenance issues, it's going to cost you €2 per 100 kilos. Sorry, that's wrong. €2 per kilo. That's better. €2 per kilo in order to keep you out. Mozzarella is €160 per 100 kilos, so €1.6 per kilo to keep you out. I was doing some work with Danone on the water on Evian and Volvic. It was the nicest one ever, really, because he said, we're worried about the duty on the Evian and Volvic coming in because it's 10% duty. I said, yeah, but that's because of you. That 10% duty is because of you. It's to protect Evian, Volvic, and Vital and people like that. It's to stop other water coming in. So it's there to protect. The current tariff that you're looking at is there to protect the things that the EU make, the kinds of things that the EU buy, and also a lot of the free trade agreements that the EU has done, and in order to bolster those, they lock other things out around them. Okay? So it is absolutely 100% the wrong place to look. Want proof? I thought I'd look up a tariff heading. I originally looked up pizza. Geez, that was complicated. So I went to car wheels, because it's nice and simple. And then that's the tariff heading, that's the HS code. HS code, commodity code, whatever. And on the left-hand side there are the minimum and maximum tariffs in the WTO for each of those countries. So Argentina is 14.18, Europe's 3.5, Israel, you can bring tyres in pretty cheap into Israel, or at 6%. Japan was the one that slightly confused me, because they make cars. But if you want to import wheels into Japan, who make cars, there is no duty from anywhere in the world. It's a bit odd. So they clearly make cars, but they clearly don't make wheels, because they want the wheels in. But it's all about what do I want, what don't I want, and what do I want, and what do I need to keep locked out? Yeah, there is a market in there, I would say China are quite good at making wheels, because they're trying to stop too many wheels coming in. That's my point. It's very, very different. And I remember people saying to me, what will be the worst case scenario in a WTO environment? And I said, well, one is I can't tell you, the book doesn't exist. But what I can give you is 4 examples. So I'll give you Korea, Israel, EU, and blah. And he said, well, why would you give me Israel? I said, well, why would you look in the EU one? You know, it's the same argument, really. So it's awkward. The one you need is that one, and we are honestly days away. The only time you need the EU WTO tariff, the erga omnes full duty rates, is if you're exporting from the UK to the EU. That's the rate you'll be paying, because that's the rate in the EU for imports from a third country. Us. Okay. Don't believe me still? He's a nice man. I had to put his name up there in the early stages, because I just don't think he's that dynamic. And we've gone through sort of David Davis, Dominic Raab, and then I remember this was all last year, and somebody put up, oh my God, I need 4 more Brexit secretaries till Christmas. And I thought, yeah, okay. They were changing quite quickly, you know. So he's not particularly, not lighting my fire, but whatever. But these aren't even his words, these are Dominic Raab's words, because I don't think he's allowed to speak on his own. But the EU will apply its most favoured nation rates to goods imported into the EU from the UK. The EU will apply WTO most favoured nation rates to our exports. The UK will apply its most favoured nation rates to goods imported into the UK from the EU. They might be different. This was said 6 months ago, but nobody wanted to hear it. There's a bunch of people as well who also quite like being the victim in all of this, that they're kind of sitting there going, oh, this is going to cost me a fortune. Going, oh, well, hang on, we don't know what it's going to cost yet. And we really, at this stage, don't know what it's going to cost. Liam Fox is saying zero everything. Bear in mind, we don't lose any money. Remember that figure with the 3 billion, which is nothing? And rightly so, Michael Gove's saying, oh, well, not everything, because I've got to protect the farming and production in the UK. But it's looking like you're going to end up with, if this is the WTO high line of the current EU WTO third country rate, we're either going to come in low or zero and selectively pick some up for Michael Gove to protect the farming. However, we also eat more than we produce, so we can't overly protect the farmer, or we'll all die, but the farmer will be rich. So we've got there's an option for him to put in tariff quotas. It's a messy piece, and it's likely to be messy, but if you've already classified your goods for import, or for import, then have them handy, because when the news breaks, you're going to want to fly through those. I've already got the WTO schedules we lodged. We lodged these in July. That's 715 pages. It's on my website if you're interested. It's a complete cut and paste of the current EU one, just to create the framework to land our tariffs on. So much so that whenever the duty rate is based on the weight of the product rather than the value of the product, it's in euros, which is not a currency we accept, which is a bit odd. So we're actually saying you import that product into the UK, that's going to cost you €5 per 100 kilos. You go, what's a euro? I don't know, we don't take it. So it's a bit of an odd thing. It was literally a cut and paste. So, but things are changing. The UK tariff will be available soon. I mean, honestly, the meeting was yesterday, apparently. It is any minute. And then we've all got to classify our goods and panic. The weird thing is we're 30 days out and we don't know what the duty rates are. But in fairness, I said that from day one because it's part of the negotiation. We can't sit on day one and go, don't worry lads, it's all free. Because then the EU will go, well, it's not our side. And we've just given up our position. So it's had to be part of this. We've had to best guess it. But I can't see a strong argument that says we would employ a duty rate on a product which we don't make in order to do what? When we don't make it anyway. So we've got nothing to protect, you know? So we've only got to look at what we produce and then find a way of protecting that with tariff quotas. Anything else, let it in, which is the EU's fear that we become actually even more competitive than they will. Hey-ho. Let's look at the customs union. Yeah, there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about Jeremy Corbyn's side is saying we need to stay in a customs union, the customs union, whatever it is, providing it's got customs union at the end of it. And then there was a lot of feeling of like, well, hey, that makes sense. Yeah, we need this customs union. A lot of politicians going down that road. So let's have a look at the customs union. Customs union will make that EU-UK flow pretty smooth. It's still paperwork, I have to tell you. The UK-EU will be duty-free, largely. Any products which we buy from third countries or import from third countries would come via the EU tariff. So we would have no, whatever rate of duty are on importations from Japan, say, are set by the EU, not by us, which significantly reduces our ability to do a deal with him on exports, because we'll be going to him saying, will you buy our stuff? And he says, no. So I'll go on. And he go, well, will you get, and he'll quite happily say to us, well, will you give us a lower rate for our stuff coming into you? I said, well, we don't actually make that rule, but go on, buy our stuff and give us a duty-free rate on it. No. Whether we've got no negotiating arm at all. We haven't got access to the import rate into Japan that he's agreed as part of the deal he's done with the EU. That's the single market. We'd be in a customs union. We're in a club with him. That doesn't mean us in a club with him. We're only in a club with him if that club's the single market. Okay? So already a bit of a subtle difference between single market and customs union. So customs union doesn't suit much. It suits that. It makes flows, of the growth areas that we had, that one's covered. That one's not so covered. Remember the two growths? Imports from the EU, happy days. Exports to non-EU, disaster. Okay? And that's just Japan. They're running around the world at the moment doing deals like there's no tomorrow. I've never seen them so busy. So the customs union suits one person down to the ground completely, and he's quite happy with us to be in it, obviously, because it suits him and it's got more control. That's why we don't want to be locked into it. Doesn't suit him at all, really. And the idea of being locked in it is disastrous. Okay. But part of the reason was, let's get a single market, let's get a customs union, because then we can avoid this kind of situation. We don't want to see this. Kent snarled up and we've got lorries, what are we going to do? Oh, we're in a customs union today and that doesn't happen. Customs union is what we need. So I went out of my way to get this picture, because that is a common sight. When you're from Kent, quite a common sight. But not that one, it isn't. That's a place called Capicula, if my pronunciation's correct, which is the border between Turkey and Bulgaria, better known as EU Customs Union. That's what a customs union border looks like. So customs union is not the way to solve a customs union border issue. In actual fact, if you require customs import documentation, and you will, being in a customs union means you need one extra document. Lovingly, some people call an EUR1. In Turkey, it's an ATR1. And for the UK, it will be an AUK1. Which weirdly was drafted in the withdrawal agreement and then 2 days later disappeared. Get a lot of that at the moment, where you look at something online and you think, bloody hell, I wouldn't expect to see that. And you go to show somebody it 2 days later, it's not there. All the text has changed. And you think, I really need to print all of these things, because things are changing so fast that you can't trust a web page anymore. You know? But that's what a border looks like when you're in a customs union. How do we not get there? How do we get in a no-deal situation and still keep things moving? Everyone keeping up? Nobody falling asleep yet? I'll see if you fall asleep anyway, and you'll be on film. Okay, this is where I come in really, because this is where I start from. The tariffs, I can't do anything to influence the tariffs. The tariffs are what the tariffs are, but I can do something to try and make sure that this is done as smooth as possible, as smoothly as possible. So, let's just get some of the misconceptions out of the way first. There will be paperwork. Get over it. Don't be sitting there thinking there won't be. The only thing that had a no paperwork situation in it was the Chequers Agreement. That actually managed to remove paperwork, and Michel Barnier commented that the Chequers proposal made the UK more competitive than the EU. So you can pretty much guess that won't fly. Okay? I mean, we would actually be stronger than the EU. Paperwork's coming back. Hey-ho! 24th of June, all over again. Slide. This is quite a busy slide, but there's two big numbers on here. This is a slide by the National Audit Office, which shows the movement of goods and the movement of data. This is actually for CDS planning, which is the upgrade from Chief to CDS. So many things changing at the same time, it's quite hard to keep up. Actually, I wrote a piece the other day when I referred to it, it's like trying to chase a chicken around a courtyard at the moment, to trying to keep up with all the changes that's going on. You get really close, but you just can't get the little bugger. Two big numbers on here. 145,000 traders have been exposed to customs formalities for the first time. Can you see okay? I keep cutting your line out. And that will generate an additional 200 million customs declarations per annum. God. And John Thompson, the CEO of Customs, said in a Treasury Select Committee that would cost £35 an entry, and then he did his maths, and it was a frighteningly high figure. And the BBC rang me the next day and said, what do you think on what John Thompson said at 200 million entries at 35 quid? Have you got a comment? I went, yeah, I'll do it for 32.50. Okay, so, and they didn't quote that one, to be fair. But these are big numbers. The one thing, I mean, 145,000 traders is a big number. And you end up in a situation where you think, I'm scratching the surface here. I'm probably working directly with about 600, but that's nothing, you know? And then I realised that's just the UK. That doesn't include Ireland. You put 20,000 in Ireland there. And then you started to go to mainland Europe, I don't counted them either, because not everyone in mainland Europe trades outside of Europe. And now we're talking to them about, yeah, you've got to do an EAD, mate. What's that? Ooh, this is complicated. So we've had to train everybody all the way back. That figure is more like 350,000 traders in Europe who are being exposed to customs formalities for the first time because of Brexit. 350,000 companies. And 200 million entries just in the UK. Okay. Then we hear the numbers about what's crossing the border. Boom. Hear this a lot. There's 10,000 trucks a day go through Dover, and 10,000 this, and 12,000 that, and 5,000 out, and 5,000 in, and blah, 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 blah. And that number's a little bit hard to get used to. So I looked at it another way, is that literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 pallets of goods just crossed the British Channel. Every second of every minute of every hour of every day, every second, a pallet crosses the British Channel. A pallet of goods. So forget your numbers of lorries and things like that. Every second, a pallet. A bit like the Bono moment, isn't it? You know, every time I clap my hands, a child dies in Africa. Remember somebody shouted out, well, stop clapping your bloody hands, you know? Every second, a pallet moves across the channel. So, clearly, the processes that we have in place, or the processes that we're proposing of port clearances, that can't happen. And port clearance agents are not getting in the way of this, they're actually supporting it. But customs clearance needs to take place at the point of loading and the point of destination. Dum-dum, with a border tick through the middle, just so you know you've crossed the border, but the customs clearance doesn't need to take place there. It does on shipping and containers, because generally what you do is you take the customs, or you look for the dwell within the flow, and you put the customs clearance process in the dwell so that you're not using up any time that wasn't otherwise used up. Now with a container, it comes off a boat, good place to do customs clearance, because there's a bit of dwell here. With a truck moving, there is no dwell. The only dwell is where did I load it, where did I tip it? So what they want to do is actually get this process, that the exporter initiates the process, the importer finishes the process, the bit in the middle is almost irrelevant. It's just how it got there. Okay? Tracking is the key, particularly to Ireland, and Eurotunnel have actually done some good work on their border crossing. And you could see that could work in Ireland. But things have moved on since the 25 years ago when I was doing entries properly, and e-commerce is the driver in all of this. I mean, you get text messages saying something's coming, and you get this coming, and the driver rings you, and this, that, and the other, throws it in your wheelie bin, and whatever. It arrives. It's all, the technology's really come on. And then we're talking about doing a custom C88 entry. So called, not because it's the 88th version, it's created in 1988. So the document we're talking about was created in 1988 as the single administrative document. And technology has moved on, really. But you need to plug into certain simplifications, certain accreditations. Trusted trader, authorized economic operator is pretty key to it. Simplifications such as CFSP, Customs Simplified Procedures for non-EU goods, or TSP for EU-only goods or EU duty-paid goods. But whatever, got to be something. Don't be clearing at the port. You can still clear at the port, but try not to. That's the worst. That's the least simplified process. And customs warehousing. Customs bonded warehousing, I hear a lot about that at the moment. Can't really see a point of it until we know what the duty rates are. You could spend an awful lot of time building a bonded warehouse only to find that Liam Fox says, the duty's nil. I don't need that warehouse now. That was a waste of time. So it's a difficult one. On the whole, I've seen people needing to put into bond because stuff that's coming from the EU is potentially dutiable in the UK, and then it might end up in Ireland, and then you think, kind of wasted paying the duty now. That's a very good point, actually. We've all got a bit lazy with being in members of the EU. When you pay duty at one point in the EU, the goods can now move freely in the EU. That's the free circulation model. People tend to get into the habit of thinking that we've somehow upgraded the origin of the goods. So when something comes from Japan and it is imported into Rotterdam, and it can now move freely because it's European, because they paid the duty. No, it's not. It's still Japanese, but it's in free circulation in the EU. When we come out of that and be mindful of this, is that now if you pay duty on something in the UK, it doesn't make it British. Okay? So if you have a product that comes from the States, comes into the UK and you pay duty on it, and then you sell it to somebody in Germany, he's got to pay duty too, because it's still American. Paying the duty does not alter the country of origin. Big point. We've all got a bit lazy with that one. We've all got a bit confused with the free circulation model and thinking that it does. It doesn't. So watch out for double duty jeopardy, which is the game shows on 9 o'clock every Friday night. Just watch out for that one. You can easily fall into that trap. Want to know a business that does this well? Garments. They've been in Brexit for 20 years. I saw an analysis by Next Retail, and they said that the impact on Brexit on their business, or Brexit rather, impacted just 4% of their business was impacted by Brexit. I'll get that statement out in the end. Just 4%. Your clothes don't come from the EU, yet you're not naked. Somehow the system works. And the system works is because they put the system in place. And people say to me, yeah, but it's not as urgent as food. Well, hey-ho, like ASOS as you see it today, you can buy it tomorrow. Can't do that with a bread roll. Well, you can actually, but these things do move quickly. Now, the reason why the garment industries are so good at it is they are masters of IPR, OPR, OSR, CFSP, CW. These will need to become part of what you do. In fact, you can't have OSR. But IPR is inward processing relief. That's becoming part and parcel of the way people talk about things. So you bring something in from non-EU into the UK, you suspend the duty on it because you're only going to process it and have every intention of it then leaving the UK. So you only pay, you don't pay any duty when it comes in because it's just production and then it's leaving. IPR, most of the motor industry will be on IPR. Aerospace, Airbus will be on IPR. OPR is the opposite. You're sending goods to outside of the UK, to say Germany, where it might now be dutiable, but it's only to be processed in order to then come back to the UK. Well, then that's outward processing relief. But IPR, OPR, these are all things that you need to get very, very familiar with. CFSP and TSP are also part of the process, and they're very important too. Customs warehousing, wait for the duty rates to decide whether or not we need customs warehousing. Okay, sign up for all the simplifications. And this is what your flow of goods into the UK looks like. This is hard Brexit. And let's make a big point here. The difference between a hard Brexit and a soft Brexit is the start date of the paperwork. It's not the paperwork. The paperwork is the paperwork. The difference between a hard Brexit and a soft Brexit is the start date of the paperwork. So, load your goods as normal. A simplified frontier declaration is needed in order to declare the goods before they arrive in Calais. When the goods arrive in Calais, they check in with the simplified frontier declaration number, clears while it's at sea, arrives in Dover, drives straight through, delivers. You've got until the 4th working day of the following month to do the final customs declaration. Longer if you warehouse it. That's it. That's Brexit. And that's without TSP. This was CFSP. Now you put TSP, you don't even need that bit. You don't even need that bit. Now you load it, you drive through Calais, you've got your EORI number, you drive through Calais, you deliver the goods, you use the goods, and you've got until the end of the month to do a customs return. That's it. That's it. Right, I need you to learn 3 phrases: EAD, EXS, ENS, C88. These are all these are the 4 cornerstones. EAD is an export declaration created by an exporter in the UK or the EU, which puts the goods under customs control and says these goods are leaving the customs territory that I'm in. Reverse charge VAT is no longer part of the game. It is now exports from the EU or from the UK are 0 rated. And imports are positively rated, albeit you don't have to pay it. But exports are 0 rated. What the EAD does is control that document. So your supplier in Milan says, I'm going to sell you something, it's 0 rated for VAT. He does an EAD declaration which closes in Calais, which proves they've left the EU, job done. His VAT liability is now extinguished, if you like. So EAD is very important. It automatically creates an EXS, which is an exit summary declaration, which alerts the border that a border crossing is about to take place, and therefore customs can have a look at the goods if they so wish. It's automatic. Those 2 are entwined. I don't know why they're separate, but everyone talks about them separately, so I have 2. The ENS is an entry summary declaration, which tells the arrival border that the goods are coming, which is the opposite of the EXS. This is a real banana skin, this one. This had the ability to pull down the whole thing. Customs, and it still does, Customs have decided to suspend the implementation of that one for 6 months. So we don't have to worry about ENS just yet, but it is coming and we need to be planning for it because it is a bit of a banana skin. The C88 is the import declaration, which can either be a pre-lodged port entry or the TSP return is still essentially a C88. Okay? All of these slides will be available afterwards, but it's important. Those 4 things are very important. Here's why. This is a UK import, goods coming from the EU to the UK. The EU exporter creates an export declaration, which in itself creates an EXS. We then create an ENS, put it in yellow because they've literally just 2 days ago postponed it. And after the event, then we create a TSP return. So he has to do it. So right now, without the entry summary declaration, your exporter is doing an export declaration, which automatically creates the border alert. The vehicle then comes towards Calais with nothing more than your EORI number on a piece of paper. Customs say, that'll do, off you go, you deliver the goods, and you've got until the end of the month to do a customs declaration for those goods that you brought in. That's Brexit. That's pretty slick. Let's look at exports. Not so good. Exports, we have to do the same thing, an EAD, which creates an EXS, all looking good so far. We need an ENS in Calais. They haven't said that they've relaxed it, by the way. We're hoping they will, because they also are struggling a bit to do it. But right now, we're going to do it. Your UK export is an EAD, an EXS, an ENS in Calais, and then somewhere inland, in mainland Europe, a customs clearance will take place because it's very much an inland process. All looking good so far. It's this one that's the cruncher. We also need a transit document. We don't need a transit document coming in. We don't need a T-form. We don't need anything. We just need the goods to be cleared up to Calais, or in fact, we don't even need that. But the supplier needs the goods up to Calais, and then we do the import clearance from there. For our exports into the EU, we also require an NCTS document, which is a transit document, which covers the liability at the destination until such time as an import entry is lodged at the destination. This is troublesome because this requires a large bond for all of our exports. We've written a paper to come up with the ESP, which is the Exporter Simplified Procedures, but at the moment it's not happening. And I'm worried about that one. Watch this space, because this one has the potential to create big queues in Kent. Sorry, get my voice, in Kent. The whole process with this one is this needs authenticating somewhere, and that tends to be at the port of exit, which is really not where we want to be. So where we had the man running across the top, our exports are not quite so good, which creates a real problem for me, in that the faster you get the import flow, the bigger the queue on exports. We're actually shooting ourselves in the foot a bit here, because if we make that flow super fast, and this one is 4 times slower, the queue can only get bigger. There's nowhere for that queue to go. And not only that, the queue at the moment being designed on the M20 is very linear, and it doesn't need to be, because on a normal case, there's a shortage of ferry capacity, and therefore the queue needs to be linear. But in a Brexit-related stack, not all vehicles are the same. He might be empty, he might already be authenticated, and he might need paperwork. So we're already saying to the police, you've got to be able to identify which one's which here, because those first 2 shouldn't be in that queue at all. Yeah? So there's a bit of a challenge going on. I can see this going wrong in the early stages. When Dover say, we're ready, they ignore this. Dover are ready for what arrives at the port. It won't get to the bloody port. So there's a spokesman from Dover said the other day, we're ready. And one of my colleagues said, for what? I have no idea. But we're definitely ready for it. I'll cover this quickly. It's a transit slide, just so that you understand what transit is. When goods come from France to the UK, we don't need a transit document. Transit document is always the dotted line. We don't need a transit document. You only need a transit document if the goods are passing through the UK onto Ireland. Okay? So we don't need one at all, but you might need one to pass through us. Our exports do require a transit document to move inland. I have to say on this one, some of the French and Germans and Italians are saying, look, I know you don't need a transit document, but we're still going to do one. That's really not going to help, but they're hell-bent on it. And if we go to Ireland via another EU state, we have to go, a non-UK state, we have to have a transit document to drive through Ireland to go to the north, in theory. Can't believe that will happen, but it's a potential. Transit is one of those things where you've got, right, I understand imports, I understand exports, and there's that transit piece. That transit piece is more complicated than both of those. The EU transit manual is 715 pages long, because there are so many connotations to how transit might work. Anyway, what do I need to do? First of all, you can do everything yourself, really. The only problem is, it is complicated. You've been doing it for a long time, it's not that complicated. Well, actually, it's still quite hard for me, because it's changing so fast. But whilst your expectations might be great, the actual final product might not be quite what you end up with, and that can create issues for you. Don't be afraid to ask, really, is the thing. And not all consultants are PwC fees, you know. If you haven't got an EORI number, leave the room, because you're obviously not listening to anything. So everybody needs an EORI. Your exporter, your importer, your haulier, and then I'm just going to show off a little bit, because I can't believe I got this the other day. The other day I bought the domain name www.eori.uk for 99 pence. So I thought, that's going to come in handy, because everybody's talking about EORIs. Right, let's do the practical. 3 slides now, they're going to give you the practicalities. You are exporting from the UK, what can you do about it? Don't panic, first of all. Most of this you can do yourself. It's only the transit document you can't. So don't panic. Export, if you're only doing a small amount of export declarations, you don't need any software. In the UK, it's a web-based system. So the thing you need to do right now, if you've got any form of exports, is Google a customs form PA7. Okay? It's a simple form to fill in. It tells you, it says, this is me, that's my address, that's my name, this is my EORI number, and I'd like web access to the NES, the new export system. 2 days later, you'll get a set of numbers back from them, and then you go into your government gateway and tick that you want access to import-export, and they confirm that in 7 days they will write to you by mail with your codes to get into that. You're ready. Once you get those codes, you're ready. You can do an export declaration. And you can do an export declaration right up to authentication. So you can sit in your office, do your export documentation, clear it for exports, ring someone like Schenker and say, these goods are ready to go. And not only are they ready to go, they're all cleared. Off you go. In fact, there's a point where really, from a freight forwarder's point of view, is don't pick it up unless it's ready to go. But you can drive all of that from your office. And normally, if you're a customs agent, you're going, well, we can do that for you for £32.50. Look, there's so much of this stuff, we can't do it all. So those that can should, because there'll be loads of others who can't for one reason or another. So if you can do it, take ownership of it. It's easy. PA7, log on to NEST through the government gateway, you're ready. The only struggling one is the NCTS, but that's where someone like Schenker come in, because they'll be doing transit documents probably from depot to depot, and they'll cover that transit. They'll charge you an arm and a leg for it, but they'll cover that. They'll cover that transit. Sorry. Imports, nice and easy one. You've got TSP. If you haven't applied for TSP, apply for TSP. Okay? It's so simple. It's a bit of an easy way in, but there are some other phases to it. Like at the moment, they say, will you just apply? You get very little response so far. But in the early stages, certainly you'll have TSP. If there is duty, you'll do a TSP return. There's no VAT to pay because it's on postponed accounting, although, as pointed out to me earlier on, apparently you've got to apply for that. I'll have to check on that. But I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know where to do that. But apparently for postponed accounting, it's not a given. You've got to tick a box, but we'll find that box for you. So you will do your TSP return, and customs will invoice you, basically, the duty, which they'll collect by direct debit on the 15th of the second month. Which all sounds a bit too easy. It is a bit too easy, because by the 30th of June, they'll ask you for a bank guarantee to cover that account where they're direct debiting you. So you've got to be mindful of that one. They're talking about that softening, but already within the text, they're saying you're going to have a bank guarantee by the end of June. But on the whole, pretty cool. You know, you've got to be a UK-based company. You can't be a freight forwarder. Schenker can't apply for this, but you can. So Schenker can't fix this, but you can give Schenker the tools to make this work smoothly, but only you can apply if you're an importer. The freight forwarder cannot right now apply for it. The entry in declarant's record side is not the end of the world. You just got to add a piece to your input ledger where the goods have arrived, and you tick the box to say they've arrived. And the deferment will come. Initially, it will be sort of without guarantee, but customs will eventually require a guarantee. Not so good if you don't have TSP, still doable, but suddenly now you've got to have a pre-lodged, one is you've got to have your IORI number always, you've got to have a pre-lodged import entry. That will create an MRN, a movement reference number. You need that before you can board the ferry in Calais. Can't get on the boat without it. Okay? And then when those goods arrive in the UK, your agent or whoever's done the import entry for you has got 24 hours in which to arrive that entry. And you can do what you like with the goods in the meantime. So it's not the end of the world, but it's not as super slick as TSP. So you've got to try and talk yourself out of TSP rather than miss the boat. Just don't miss the boat with it. If you're not sure, apply. Okay? I have, and I'm not even an importer. I think I've got 2 more slides, actually. So we're pretty good on timing. There's two things I want you to think about. One is, who is the importer? It's maybe not as obvious as it sounds sometimes. And often it comes down to who ordered it. Now, we hear a lot of situations at the moment, we hear that the retailers aren't making too many sounds about Brexit, apart from saying, I want to still sell your products, please make sure your products are on my shelves. But very rarely are Tesco, Sainsbury's, Aldi's, very rarely are they the importer. Because the goods, when they've entered the UK, is consignment stock from the producer of those goods elsewhere. And therefore, as it crossed the border, Tesco's hadn't ordered it. And they might never order it. But the German sausages have just been moved to a warehouse in the UK, like Colina or Oakland, waiting for Tesco's to order them. And when they do, they're delivered. Now, at that point, the German sausage producer is the UK importer because the goods are moving on consignment stock basis, which is fab. We're all ready for that. We know how to do it. He's got a UK VAT number. He's got a UK IORI number. He can't have TSP because he's not a UK company. So that lovely food that was TSP was geared around, let's keep food moving, has just cut food out of the equation. So we've now got a situation where a full load of yogurt sitting at Calais might be held up while a full load of steel goes flying through because he's got TSP, which is just ludicrous, and we've pointed that out to them. But you may need a UK VAT and EORI number for the supplier. Right now, we'd actually say also open in the UK. If you can, there's sort of tax connotations with that, but if you can, do. But in order to do that, you need a UK company. Must be a UK company. Today, you must be a UK company to have TSP. That said, day one launch of TSP was for non-controlled goods only, and you could not use it for excise goods. Day two, you can use it for excise goods, and they didn't tell anybody, they just changed the web page. So I argued tooth and nail with somebody saying, no, you cannot use it for excise. And he went, I've looked it up. I went, hang on, let's look it up. Oh, yeah, you can. How stupid do I look? Nobody had said anything. They just sort of surreptitiously in the background changed the web page. Incoterms. How many of you are good at Incoterms? If you're only involved in EU trade, Incoterms to you means X works free delivered. Okay? Free delivered doesn't exist, but it morphs into delivered duty paid. They're the worst Incoterms in the world. Okay? X works delivered duty paid is what tends to happen in the EU, and they are singularly the worst. Okay? Before I tell you why, I'm going to tell you there's three Incoterms that are really important. The value on all export documentation is FOB. Okay? So that you always reduce the value or up the value to the FOB value. That's your value for export is always FOB. It's the value at the exit port. The value for import duty is CIF, the arrival value at the UK port. And the value for VAT is everything added up, which basically is DDP. So duty is VATable. I love that. Always a tax on a tax. Love that. Right, the X-Works is a disaster because if you're an exporter and you're selling X-Works, you think, I don't have to worry about this. You're now zero rating your export, and he's doing the export declaration that will resolve your liability for that zero rating. Sure about this? You might want to think about how you do that. If you're zero rating your export, even on an X-Works basis, I'd own the export declaration, because otherwise when the VAT man comes around and says, where's the VAT? And you go, it was an export, and he says, prove it. Yeah, I can't, because I didn't do the document. Sorry. So X-Works for exports is really not that good. X-Works when you're AEO as well is also a bit of an issue, because with X-Works when you're AEO, you're saying, I'm really secure, and yet you're selling goods X-Works, so somebody's backing onto your bay and you don't know who it is. DDP is worse. DDP, delivered duty paid, depending on who you talk to, because these are all written for maritime, really. But delivered duty paid, some people will tell you that includes VAT, and other people say it doesn't include VAT. So, to my mind, I don't think it should include VAT, because if you're going to include VAT, you've got to open if you're a German company selling DDP to the UK, you're now going to need to open a UK company in order to handle the VAT. When really, all you're going to do then is pay the VAT on your UK company and then charge your UK company plus UK VAT. So it would have been easier if he just paid the import VAT. Difficult ones. Try and avoid those two Incoterms if you can. On our website, which is www.mybrexit.uk, we've got these step-by-step guides. So we'll make this presentation available, but it's a presentation. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. There's not a lot of text on it without me talking over the top of it. But these guides, which are both about sort of 15, 16 pages long, actually take you through the whole process of apply for, on the export one, apply for PA7, open your government gateway account, apply for PA7, go on the NEST system, do this, do that, and make sure you've got the flows. The import one is a bit more interesting in that it's got, it's so sort of, we're so sort of moved on now. We're talking about what the data flow is rather than what the process is. What do you need, or what does your broker need in order to make sure everything happens at the right place at the right time? Because it comes down to that. And what we found in a lot of cases is somebody would say, well, look, we load our truck in Lyon and it comes to the UK. And you go, well, that's fine. All we need to know is what you loaded in Lyon. And the answer in a lot of cases is, I haven't got a clue. He said, because it's so integrated over the years that rather than check it on and check it off, we just cut one of the processes out. We just check it off. So I've no idea what I've loaded in France, and now I've got to do an export declaration for something and nobody knows what it is. You're done. You survived. Did that make sense? Coffees are served, apparently. If I'm all right on timing, Julie, am I all right on timing? Oh. Whoa, milk me. Yeah, okay, no worries. So, you're done. I'm not done. Does anybody have any, well, was that helpful? Did it make sense? Is it what you'd heard before? Or were there some sort of myths busted there? Because hopefully there's a few myths busted. There's an awful lot out there where we hear of scary stuff like no lettuce. Questions, go for it. I think Julie has a mic, so if anyone's got a question, can you raise your arm and a mic will come your way.
You don't have to be a UK company to apply for TSP. You have to have a UK business address to apply for TSP.
Really?
Really, yeah.
When did that? Okay.
If you go on the application form, it asks you for the registered office address for your company and your UK business.
I know what you're saying. It doesn't ask for a UK registration number. It doesn't ask for any registration number. It just asks for...
Yeah, it just asks for... It asks
a VAT and a EORI.
Yeah, correct. So if you're VAT registered and have a UK business address, so if you're a German company that has a UK business address, a VAT and a EORI number, you can register for TSP.
Really?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, good news.
TSP is about 10 days old, I have to say, so I'm a 10-day expert. Well, I'm now actually just got a bit better. I didn't know that. And to be fair, I don't know if anybody's had any responses yet from the TSP team. I've put in about 200. And
I had a response from them, actually.
Have you had a response?
I haven't had the authorization through, but they've checked some further details, yeah.
Fab. So, okay, well, I'll try that then, because at the moment people are running around trying to open UK companies. So. Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more, or are you now all... You're either thirsty or bored, or you're geniuses.
Robert,
Robert,
you said during your presentation that the difference between the 29th of March date and a later date is the date at which documentation needs to start being prepared for import-export.
Yes.
There's a lot of discussion in the media about what the Norway plus or Canada plus, this kind of language is out there. Could you just comment on what they, as you see them, what they mean to people in the room here today?
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Within the guides, actually, we do an analysis of all of those, of no deal, checkers, Canada plus, and Norway. They're more about the FTA. They're more about what's the free trade arrangement of that? Is that what do we have to sell in order to get access to the market? Norway, we get sort of quicker access, but we have to sell some of there has to be some movement of people in there, and we have to contribute something towards the fund. Canada is a little bit more making it up. You might not get quite as good access in some areas, but you also get more protection on the freedom of movement of people, because although there is some freedom in there. So, but all of them are paperwork. Even when we looked at Canada, paperwork. Norway, paperwork. There isn't anything that doesn't have a paperwork requirement in there. So all the time that exists, these agreements, these Norways and Canadas and what have you, are more about the next phase of the FTA. What does the FTA look like? What does that deal look like? And how is trade going to be configured going forward? But in all cases, unless there is a will to remove the need for paperwork, then it exists. It still exists. So we have analysed it. We've gone through really what paperwork is required and what border checks are required and what's driven where. But in all cases, it's paperwork. Everything is paperwork. The only way you don't have paperwork today is if you're in the single market. It's not the customs union. It's the single market piece. The customs union requires paperwork. Everything from Turkey today, paperwork. Switzerland, paperwork. Norway, paperwork. This is with the EU today. Okay? So there isn't a company trading with the EU today I can think of where there isn't a border declaration of some description. So it doesn't solve the problem they think it solves, but it's not unusual. So definitely, there's no getting away from the paperwork side. You know, how you do that is different. How you do that paperwork is different, and it should be embedded. Should almost be in the DNA. Like today, if you're trading to a significant level or any level really, you're doing intrastat returns. And I've never heard of anybody saying, "Oh, the supply chain snarled up because Joan's off and she does the intrastat returns." It's just something that happens. You know, it's just embedded in the process. You don't even think about it. What we want to do, and what customs also want to do, is get to a process where you're doing a customs declaration without really knowing that you're doing a customs declaration. It's just part of that process, like it is in the garment trade. And it's achievable. So, was there a question somewhere I saw?
Yeah, thanks for the clarification on TSP. That's a lot clearer. If you're not an importer but acting as a direct representative of an importer, is there any guidance out there on what UK requirement you have? Do you have to be resident in the UK, UK address?
Sorry, could you repeat just the first part of that question?
If you're a direct representative for an importer rather than the importer themselves.
So if you're sort of fiscal, well, as a fiscal rep?
Yeah.
You see, as a fiscal rep, you're registered for VAT and EORI probably, or the foreign company is registered for VAT and EORI. That's a thin line now with this established business address in the UK. Do you know what I'd apply? I think they are making this up as they go along. So if you have a situation, as I do at the moment with like my German sausage man and my Spanish Serrano ham, you know, he's not in the UK, but I'm his fiscal rep on VAT and EORI, because that's the way we were going, you know. Does he qualify for TSP? Letter of the law, no. As his fiscal rep, am I his UK business address? Yeah, worth a go. But it's honestly that kind of woolly, you know, worth a go. What can happen, really? Because having this chap from SC Johnson saying at the back, I know what I'll be doing later on is putting in, you know, I read it as UK established.
The issue is the definition of established in customs law is different to the definition of established in company law. So if you look at the Union Customs Code, for example, I know that's EU legislation, is not necessarily what applies, but HMRC do recognise it, is that even if you're an overseas entity that has business activity here in the UK, so you own stock in the UK, you have people employed here potentially, you have a VAT registration, you have an EORI number, you can apply for TSP.
Provided you've got a UK EORI.
Provided you have a UK EORI, correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, yeah, and you would in that case have a UK EORI, because you're a fiscal rep or direct representation for the foreign supplier. Yeah. It's getting better, isn't it? We're making Brexit disappear. So,
what do you think would happen in a situation where you had a groupage trailer with TSP customers on it and non-TSP customers on it? And would that need to be covered by transit, import-wise?
Well, do you know what? There's a large part of that saying that you do it on transit, inland, so that it crosses the border as in transit to a depot in Dartford, okay? Because then you haven't got that problem of who's EORI, who's not, you know, who's MRNs and who's TSPs, and oh yeah, man. I can see that happening quite a bit from groupage operators' point of view. It creates a document. I mean, Dover's not yet really sure what to do with transit, and they'll just get waved through anyway. I mean, day one, I can tell you that if you've got 10 consignments on there and only 9 of them have got TSP, that will get through fine, because nobody's checking. I mean, right now, if you arrive at Calais and say, here's my EORI number, I'm on TSP, they can't check. So they'll go, okay. So it's loose. It's very loose. And this was the issue at the moment when you say, look, actually the default position is carry on. Okay. And that's when I spoke at a customs compliance conference a while ago, and the compliance people were just twitching because this is just so non-compliant. But we say, well, look, you know, if it arrives in Calais, and one of the original stages was, Eurotunnel said, how do I know if the driver's got on MRN? And Customs said, ask him. And he went, okay, what? And if he says yes, he goes, that's fine. You just need to satisfy yourself that you're convinced he has an MRN. So you think, right, okay. So what idiot driver's going to go, no. Do you know, it's, right, park over there for a day. Oh, damn it, should have said yes. So it's really loose. And that's why, this is why I wanted to point out some of the what goes on today piece, really, is that it is really loose, but it's no looser than today. You know, we don't collect any duty today, so if we accidentally didn't collect any duty tomorrow, nah. Yeah. The only one who's disadvantaged is the compliant trader. Government unlost out, which isn't fair, but hey-ho. You know? Now, the other thing is it's then a smuggler's haven, you know. Oh, we've opened the doors and the smugglers will come in. And why? What's any different to today? You know, it's like people say to me, well, we're allowing trucks in and we're not checking them, like we do today. What we actually do today is when you stand on the roundabout at Dover, the trucks come off the boat and drive everywhere. I have no idea where they came from. Just if they require customs clearance, they go up the road and turn left into the customs clearance station. So obviously the ones who want customs clearance do that, and the ones who don't, I think. But I really don't know what's on it. All I know that it was good enough to pass through the EU, it's good enough for us. You know? And really, that's still the theory. If it was good enough to pass through the EU, safe for us. You know? There are still some issues in the background as well, though, because we're saying we're not checking food, we don't need phytosanitaries, we don't need health certificates, we just don't need any of that in the early stages. And then we throw in a sort of plant passport, unless you've got a plant passport for certain cut flower, or certain plants, actually. That's why it's called a plant passport, I guess. And that requires a place of first arrival, and PHSI are going to go off and examine these goods. So it's not all as rosy as it looks, but if you've got fairly straightforward product flows, then it can be pretty rosy. You know, you've almost got to go out of your way to make it go wrong. Okay? Are you CFSP, Mr. Johnson, man? Okay. There was a feeling that CFSP, which was kind of the forerunner or the daddy, you know, would be slightly disadvantaged by TSP, but because it would require a frontier deck when TSP doesn't. But actually, with entry and declarants records on CFSP, you don't need a frontier deck either. So. I think the issue with TSP is that it's obviously a temporary. Well, till July 2020, though. Or something.
But it's still temporary. It's temporary within CFSP. It's the help. I mean, let's not forget it's limited to exclusive railroad facilities.
Yes. Yeah, no, true.
So, I mean, if we were very specific, those exclusive railroad you still need CFSP if you want to do the same.
Yeah, it's a good point. Is that I mean, at the moment I was doing a lot of CFSP applications, which is for the sort of the daddy of TSP, and you've raised a very good point. Is that CFSP is years old and it's here to stay, but we kind of park those for the time being and drop to TSP. And deliberately park them so that we don't complicate the TSP application. Let's get these things in stages. But going forward, CFSP would be a more reliable piece because you've got more coverage. Of that, the 255 million entries that will be required as a result of Brexit, today that's 55 million entries. And about more than 70% of those 55 million entries today are done on CFSP. So whenever people always go like, oh, I've never really heard of that, what's that about? More than 70% of the 55 million entries today are on CFSP. So we were desperately going down the CFSP route, trying to prepare everybody for it, only for Customs then to relax it into TSP. We've got a few issues with TSP, and we think it's got problems with transit. Is that if your exporter sends the goods in and he includes a transit document, someone's got to close that transit. And if the importer is disconnected from the process and is just doing a TSP return at the end of the month, all nice and easy, the transit document's never going to get closed by anybody, and it needs to get closed by an authorised consignee, who's probably not the TSP operator. So that document stays open, and now your supplier in Italy has still got an open liability for the duty and VAT which you've already paid. Now you're sending them it's messy. So what we were saying is TSP should be opened up to intermediaries as well, with automatic authorised consignee status, so that we can then bring stuff over the border as an intermediary on our EORI. We'll split the EORIs down the next day into the returns for each of the importers that are on board, and shut down the once the declarations are done, we'll shut down the transit documents as a consequence. Job done, thank you. One of the Dover agents had a lovely line when he said, he said this to a bunch of MPs we were with the other day. And he said, look, it's really frustrating because customs won't listen to us, and we've got the ideas, we know we've run these things, you know. So he said, customs just won't listen to what we're saying, yet they're quite happy for us to collect their taxes for them. I thought, that's a good point. It's just the customs agent who's sitting there getting paid 35 quid an entry or whatever over the last whatever years is collecting the taxes on behalf of the government and entrusted to do so even though he's unlicensed. And yet when they come up with a plan, they don't talk to that guy. And they haven't referred to them enough. I mean, I was bitching at the ERG originally because they were talking to Hans Massen of Mako in Rotterdam, which is fine. Rotterdam's a good piece. It's not got any wheels on the truck, on the containers, but it's got the right theory. And they were also talking to Lars Carlson of KGH, who was very involved in the Norwegian-Swedish border. And I was just kind of sitting there going, hi, we're only an hour away, chaps, you know, and we've actually run this terminal for years. You know, and you know, it might not be on the same numbers because we've not had that volume of non-EU traffic, but the fact is it's pretty seamless and it's almost invisible. And even if you look at the Port of Dover today, and you stand on the cliffs and see the trucks moving, as I did with the CEO of the Port of Dover and said, what's your issue with Brexit? And he said, well, I can't stop this flow. I can't have anything get in the way of this flow. And I said, okay, point to me from the top here, from the tops of the trucks, which ones are Turkish, which ones are Swiss, and which ones are Iranian. He said, well, it's impossible. They're all going at the same speed. I went, voila. There's your answer. They're all going at the same speed. Customs process has taken place somewhere else. It doesn't take place at the port. Why do you keep saying it will? The port needed to divorce themselves from the whole process. The saviour in this was Eurotunnel, because Eurotunnel opened in November 93, well actually 94 actually, and the borders came down in 1193. Eurotunnel never had customs clearance. It's always been off-site. Dover did, and then moved it off-site. So Eurotunnel has actually been fundamental in getting these changes because they've sat there and just said, we weren't made for this. It's not our job. And from day one, really, Eurotunnel said, not our job, this. We're just a transit. Okay? And they've done well with it, in fairness. So, any more questions? There's a... I'll have a quick drink while you do that.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify a point I think you made. Did I hear correctly that under a CFSP world of EU to the UK, no frontier declaration will be required?
Say which one again?
So under the future scenario of EU to UK and a CFSP authorised trader, no frontier declaration will be required?
Right now, CFSP rather than TSP.
Yeah.
Right now on CFSP, there are two styles of CFSP, which is the supplementary declaration or the IDA, entry in declarants records. By rule, right now, you wouldn't need a frontier dec on the IDA, but you would on the supplementary declaration phase. Okay. Yeah, upgrade to IDA, because TSP is IDA, is entry in declarants records, and that doesn't require a frontier dec at all, and therefore CFSP on the same state wouldn't do either. I don't know if they'll be able to recognise the difference, to be fair, at the border, but yeah, if you're not on IDA, I'd get it up to IDA level so that you don't have to do any declaration, because nobody wants to be doing any declarations.
Okay, thanks.
That's okay. Easy. Oh. That light.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, we got sidetracked.
Yes.
Sorry, okay. You stole the mic. No, go on, Seth.
I think you alluded to the possibility of a transition even with a hard Brexit.
Yes.
Now that is kind of my thinking, that we can't just have a D-Day and then everything will just crash. So really your thoughts on that, I guess, a bit further, just to maybe expand on that. And then I've also got a question about TIR in terms of transit.
Ooh, okay. Well, first on the first piece, I mean, I don't know. There are still, everything is available. You know, it's all we're hearing is that the talk inside is it getting a little bit more of, look, if no deal happens. I mean, the EU have said we'll extend Article 50. You just got to ask. And the UK hasn't asked. There's some political pressure on them not to ask. But equally, we're not ready on the 29th of March. We're nearly there. I mean, we've now got the pieces that will allow us to be ready, but we haven't got the time. You know? So, I mean, okay, TSP's a super slick, well, we don't know if it's super slick, we know the first bit is, but we know the process should be quite quick. We'll soon find out if it's super slick, because it must be nearly 15 days now, isn't it? And they say that they'll respond within 15 days. But we don't know. But we just don't have time to get ready for the 29th of March. And we've certainly fed that back up the line. Everyone else is feeding it up the line. The Irish are feeding it. The French are feeding it, just saying, look, we can be ready now we've got a clearer picture, but we just need a bit more time to do this. So, but will the politicians do what we want them to do? Do you know what? I don't know. You've given up trying. I'm not fearful of a no deal. I mean, even if a crash out without any transition, we'll get through it. We'll get through it on our imports. I just don't think we're ready on our exports. Again, we can even get through it on our exports, but I don't think they're ready for our imports. You know, so I think we could be full of stuff on imports, and we've still got a problem with exports. So hopefully, the second part, sorry, was about
just thinking about in terms of transit.
TIR on transit. As a Turkish movement, for example, or
well, we do. We've got a lot of European trade, but also we ship to Russia, Ukraine. So currently we do an EAD for say Russia, and then obviously clears up Lithuania, Latvia, wherever into.
Yeah, and somebody's doing a TIR further on from there, or
well.
Yeah, I mean, you would still do an EAD, but up to the UK border, because it's leaving the territory of the UK, and then you need a transit document to transit the EU with non-EU goods. That can be a transit document up to the EU frontier. Or it could be a TIR carne, I suppose, further on, depending on who's in the TIR convention. But
that's it. I mean, TIR to some extent sort of died a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of got its place, though, hasn't it? There's still quite a few coming from Turkey on TIR, I have to say, even though they joined the CTC 3 years ago or something, or maybe more. Still, the drivers are saying, "Look, I need a TIR. It looks nice. People like it, and if not, I got to bring 200 Marlborough up to get through the border." So it's got its place, but they're building it in. But it always kind of has a TSAD sitting next to it as well as a sort of an NCTS entry, but as an NCTS entry secured by there's no transit guarantee. The guarantee is the carne itself, if you like. But no, still exists. I'm glad you didn't ask me about ATA carnes, because I haven't read up much on those. They're covered, and if anybody wanted any detail, I could dig it out, but I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it because it doesn't generally need a broker, so thank God you didn't ask me about ATAs. Don't now ask me about ATAs.
Okay. In fact, just one other thing I was thinking about, and that's in terms of simplified procedures. I mean, you talk about OPR, IP, and that type of thing. Now, since the UCC came in, I think the burden to be AO or AO equivalent to get those standards is pretty much across the board.
Yep.
So again, my thinking is that once we're out of the EU, UCC doesn't apply. So maybe UK customs will, lower the threshold.
Bar. Yeah. Okay. They said that they would honour they would work to UCC. And I think they're doing the right thing, is because the Barnier said from day one, really, the risk of this is the reason why this is an unprecedented deal, is most people want to join the EU and gradually work towards total convergence. We've already got total convergence, so there's nowhere, we can't get any more in the middle. The only way we can come out is outwards, and that's the problem. Our only the only way the UK can change the UK is to diverge from current systems. So therefore they're trying to give them some confidence that we're not going to diverge from too many too soon. And UCC is one of them, where they sort of said, no, we'll go with that, because you spent hundreds of years working on it, it makes sense. We do tend to soften a bit, though, is that in a lot of cases, the AEO piece, for example, on certain applications, makes the application a bit simpler, but it is not necessarily embedded into the process. I can't think many where it is actually embedded yet. There are some where it's coming, but there's a couple, but on the whole, we can still get the approvals, but you just got to fill in more paperwork. And so AEO is very much part of the future. It's not a day one, it's not going to put any fires out, but it is actually, don't not do it because it looks a bit cumbersome. I think we're going to get to a stage where it's going to say more about you if you're not AEO rather than if you are, because suddenly the record just sees that you don't value customs compliance. That's what customs will see when they read the document, So it is still very much part of it, I think. And it will save you some money, eventually, by having cheaper bonds and guarantees, I mean, at the moment they're giving away sweets in the sweet shop, so there isn't much to save because they're giving it away, but there will be. So.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
No problem, sir. You had a question, didn't you? Yes. Oh, would you bring your own mic?
Yes, no worries. Can you hear me? Yes, that's better, thanks. So my name is Gilles Fernandez, I'm based in Ireland, and we import in excess of 5 million parcels every year from the UK into Ireland, and our typical customers are UK-based retailers, the likes of some of the brands you have named, and I was interested when you're saying that DDP is the worst Incoterms. We have been recommended, our UK retailers, to go to offer DDP solutions to their customers in Ireland because you're dealing, everybody here in the room are businesses and it's highly technical, but the reality of it is you're dealing with an Irish-based customer who just wants his parcel. So what do you think is the right approach for this?
You're not too bad because DDP, because you're in the flow of the DDP, so you're actually okay. It's when you're trying to do DDP remotely that if your UK customer was trying to deliver a parcel in Ireland without you, okay, DDP is a disaster because he's now got a VAT issue, and how do I get the VAT back, and oh Jesus, and how do I pay the duty? It's complicated. But with you being that, it's almost not DDP really because it's coming into you and then you're moving it on. So you can now control the VAT and the duty. But as DDP, you could end up paying the VAT. Is this a B2C parcel or a B2B parcel?
Yeah, it's B2C, yeah.
Yeah, okay. You'll end up paying the VAT, technically. So the products come across as DDP, so it's a duty and VAT inclusive price. You've customs cleared it in Ireland by stripping out the duty and VAT and then paying the duty and VAT. Which means you can get the duty back. It means you can get the VAT back.
Well, what we've been saying to them is to register with an Irish VAT number so they can actually collect VAT in the UK on behalf of the Irish government. So
it is that really, because you've suddenly got a situation where that product comes out. I mean, the product's been sold to you and then been sold to...
No, the product has been bought online from an Irish customer from a UK-based retailer.
Yeah, and it's delivered to him on a DDP basis.
Correct,
and he's
yeah.
B2C. It's the right thing because he's B2C. I'm a bit out of touch with the parcel because I've tended to be more bigger freight, but the only bit I'm out of touch with on the parcel is they keep lowering the threshold for entries, which isn't a good thing because it just means you're going to need more documentation. But B2C, yeah, the VAT's the VAT, so it is better to be DDP. To a degree, I mean, it's unlikely to affect the value of the product at this stage. I mean, where I found quite interesting was somebody was saying, I used to sell this stuff for 100 quid to Lidl or whatever, and now they won't pay anything for it. So they've just said, I'll keep the 100 quid, but it's DDP. And the guy said to me, look, it's this 10% duty on it now. So it was £1,000 before to Lidl. Now the duty's going to cost me 100 quid. No, it's not. Although the duty rate was 10%, if the product is £1,000 including 10% duty, the duty is not 10%. Because if the customer is sitting there saying, I'm not paying any more, but now that includes duty, the duty rate is less than it looks like. Because in order to calculate the duty rate, the first thing you do is strip out the freight and the duty to work out the duty. So in a lot of cases, I found like a 10% duty became an 8.3% duty, because you strip off the duty to apply the duty, which then ends up being back at 100%. That makes sense? So, but in your case, you would be, particularly if it's B2C, you would be DDP. B2B, and there would be B2B in there, I guess. Okay, then B2C, yeah, B2C, DDP. It's a world of acronyms, isn't it? It is a world of acronyms, and they're creating them as they go, like TSP and D1ND. Did you come across that one at all? I went to a meeting and it was the D1ND team. It's the Day One No Deal team. They had an email address, email D1ND at moving at the border. Okay, but they love it. My only problem at the moment with customs is they're very good at what they do, but they're in silos and they're just not communicating. Apparently there was a border delivery group meeting last week after TSP, where customs had released TSP and had now dropped also ENS. Border Force went nuts, and just said, look, you're just not talking to anybody. Another colleague of mine in Dover was at a meeting the other day by Border Force who went over about, this is what's going to happen, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and he said, you're saying ENS, but they postponed that yesterday. And the Border Force guy went, did they? And I was thinking, oh my God. But, it's a mess at the moment. We'll get there eventually. At least it's not as bad as it could have been. Nothing stuck at the border. Any more questions, or is anyone happy as Larry? Oh, here's one. That light keeps getting me. Every now and then it just runs, wow, Good question.
Hello. We hear quite a lot about, impact assessments, stress testing, for example, by the Governor of the Bank of England. And I'm just sort of looking or considering, and wanted your opinion on that, on more complicated supply chains, because there's certain industry verticals, for example, in automotive aerospace, where it's quite multifaceted. Because obviously, to make a car or build an aircraft, you're going to have component parts either from EU countries, from non-EU. They may then be coming into the UK. They may be exported then to EU, to non-EU. On the flip side, it might be car manufacturers in Germany. Yeah. So what's your opinion? Obviously, post-Brexit 29th, have there been stress tests done on worst case scenarios? And we know that obviously the car market is in the news, obviously in the UK, that there are certain difficulties there, and obviously there are considerations whether they should move offshore from the UK. So I just wondered whether there had been any impact assessments or stress testing done.
I dare say there have been, in terms of, the assessments, yes, there's been many, I guess. They tend to just look at the status quo and compare what a worst case scenario Brexit might look like, and don't necessarily see the opportunities in some cases. Politically, they don't want to in some cases. But I think you're right. I think there's an opportunity, Brexit creates an opportunity to excel at something that's a bit more complicated. But at the moment, it's no more complicated in UK as it is in Germany, as it is anywhere else. And we're all in a level playing field saying, well, we could actually assemble your car. And literally it's a case of, well, where am I likely to sell it? That's where I'll assemble it. Like with the Nissan and Honda kind of situation. Or which government's going to give me the most money, I'll assemble it there. Because we were all in the same, we were all 27 of us lining up going, pick me. And now we're not. Now we can actually think a little bit differently and go, well, no, actually, if you do that, we'll do this, this, and this. And we'll allow IPRs and OPRs to flow a bit more smoothly. We'll put you in a free port zone. We'll put you in there, whatever. We can, subject to UCC rules, we can bend things a little bit more just to make things a bit more suited to us. And we're not just all one size fits all, 27 flags, or 28 flags as it was, and just hoping R1 was a bit more eye-catching than the previous. So I think you're right. It's, I approached this a while ago. It's a bit cheesy line, but I said I quite like Brexit because it's something else we can excel at. Because it's a complication now in the market, which means there's an opportunity. And I think the motoring or the automotive was an opportunity for that. Okay, it's taken a bit of a hit, but it's not particularly a Brexit-related hit. You know, the car market is changing, and Honda have decided to change with it. Nissan originally came out and said, oh, Brexit's going to be a disaster, it's going to do this, that, and the other, which was a bit galling, really, because when I sat in Dover, we used to see truck after truck after truck of Nissan wiring looms, electrical circuits. They all came from a company called Yazaki, who were in Morocco. That's definitely not in the EU. And they all required customs clearance, and they all arrived there. And I didn't see the supply chain stop, but yet, you know, this was so many of these sort of politically motivated statements. But I think you're right. I don't know what the background assessment of it is, but it must be there. There must be an opportunity to create these havens. It all depends on what our duty rate ends up being. Because then you have a situation of, do I now have to IPR stuff and put some layers in there? Or is it just like Singapore, where you bring it in, build it, and ship it? You know, it's. I think we've got a real opportunity. I said a while ago, in a world of candles at the moment, we've got the opportunity to invent the bulb. But at the moment, sometimes we look like we're just going to blow out all the candles. You know, and let's do this. Let's get this right. You know, the customs processes that I came into that I left 25 years ago and came back to, and that haven't changed. Jesus, why haven't they changed? You know, why hasn't this modernised? We've now got an opportunity to invent, you know, necessity, mother of invention, and all that. We now have a necessity to make something super slick. Let's make that, because a process which is 25 years old. I mean, even today, your export, I sit there going, right, your exporter raises an EAD, which automatically raises an EXS, exit border alert. Brilliant. Oh, then you've got to do an entry border alert. Oh, does it do that? No, you've got to do that. Well, does it transmit that to that? Nah. Why would that be? That would be too clever. But surely, why have we got one bit of data that the 4 entries fly off it? I don't, you know, in this day and age. So no, I think you're right. I think we've got to look for opportunities to create innovations, really, and innovations in customs process. And tax drives innovation. There's an old story I used to use years ago, is that if you want to see how taxation changes attitude, look at the bricked up windows in the old council houses. That was because of a bedroom tax. And so some people bricked up windows. So I'm paying that. Little Johnny in the background, I can't see, shut up. It's 200 quid a year less, you know. So it changes how things work. You know, taxation has an impact on everything. You know? So I think you're right. I don't know whether those assessments will exist. I don't have them, but they are out there. It's too much for me to read at the moment, I have to say. Any more for any more?
Yes, going back to ENS in particular.
ENS.
ENS, yeah. How do you foresee that actually working with regard to comparing full loads and groupage shipments? Because although it's been delayed, there's still going to be a requirement for the shipping lines, for the tunnel,
when the ENS comes in.
For ENS. Where will that ENS actually happen? Will it happen?
The ENS should be 2 hours before it arrives at the border.
Yeah.
So right now, there isn't an ENS on UK arrival, but there is a ENS on UK dispatch. So in theory, before you leave Dover, you need to have the ENS done in France. What does an ENS look like? Nobody knows at the moment. We know what an ICS looks like, which is the maritime version, but we're not really maritime. It's a bit different. I've got the data from the D1ND team, which basically says it's 38 fields. It's more than a bloody simplified declaration at the frontier. So, you know, customs entry is 48 boxes and you don't fill them all in. And the ENS was 38 boxes, but you don't fill all of those in. But that was basically at a consignment level. At a consignment level, which is ludicrous. But I get it, but it was actually saying, like, the goods are from this EORI number to this EORI number. There's 33 pallets of goods, and these are the tariff headings involved. It wasn't a specific data per tariff heading. It was basically saying that, you know, this is a full load of stuff, and these are the tariff numbers on that truck. And therefore, they could just look through and go, oh, we don't like that one. We want to have a look at it. on a consignment level. That's where AEO kicks in. AEO's got real value at that point, because now you're actually looking at it going, oh, we need to look at that. Oh, that's okay, he's AEO. So that's where AEO's got more power. But as it stands today, consignment level. And thank God they postponed it.
So as a groupage operator, you're going to have a situation where you could potentially be having to enter 40 or 50 different ENSs for your groupage trailer?
Yeah.
Which is eye-opening stuff as a groupage operator.
And it was right. You know, it was, and with heavy penalties for non-compliance, apparently. How they track non-compliance is quite interesting, because they didn't really have any way of tracking it. I mean, part of the reason why they postponed it is they were waiting to write a system, because originally, like the ICS one is via chief, but now we're demanding that everybody has a kind of a chief access to this. I mean, okay, you could do it through a web-based portal maybe, but nobody had written it. They needed to make it more accessible. Plus it's the kind of cardinal sin is it's the carrier's responsibility, and the carrier's responsibility is the haulier. So now the importer was going, nothing to do with me. I'm going, yeah, you need to own this. You need to own this problem, because you can sit there going, there's nothing to do with me all day long, and your stuff will be sitting in Calais going, not my fault. It's still in Calais. Do you know what I mean? It's still sitting where it was sitting. So, but it's a problem. As I was saying, this was the banana skin in the whole piece. And even when Customs said, we've invented TSP, everything's brilliant. I went, well, you need to move the ENS, because what you did with TSP was remove the need for a simplified frontier declarations, which is 10 boxes, but left the 38 box, the NS there, that was still filling in. So, look, it's suspended. Will it ever come back? I hope not, because it's real banana skin. Because it's data as well, is that if it's the haulier's responsibility, some people will leave, on full loads, they leave it to the haulier. How do we get that data? How does the haulier get that data from a Bulgarian truck driver?
Yep. Will the haulier say, sorry, the freight forwarder moving that trailer, it's their responsibility?
Yeah, I mean,
so it gets passed on to the
but then it
freight
ends up
forwarder.
being...
And then it gets passed on to the customs broker for the freight forwarder.
Yeah, well, this is what I was saying to the importer, really, is take ownership of this problem. And even though it's not your responsibility, you won't get your goods unless this is done. So you might as well take ownership of the problem. And even if there's a fee for that, just deduct it from the haulage bill. It's his responsibility, but you need to own it. Okay? How are we on time, by the way? What time do you want? Okay.
Hi. Oh, yes, working now, thanks.
Where are you?
You were mentioning, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, you were mentioning the advantage of having an AEO. To have an AEO, you have a European one, but that won't be helpful for the UK. You need a UK AEO. So in this case, to one of the needs, you must be a regular importer. But you wouldn't be if you're bringing goods from Europe up to now.
Yes. Like, I need to apply for an AEO so that I can get my stuff through the border quickly. And you apply for your AEO, and they say, well, you don't import any non-EU goods. Well, not yet. And they go, yeah, well, until you do, you can't have your AEO application. It's a proper chicken and egg. It's the advice in Ireland from revenue commissioners was buy something. Like, buy something from China. Honestly, that was the advice to people. Buy something from China and then it will show up on the record that you bought something, and now you've got non-EU trade. But you're right. Day one, if you only trade in EU today, in theory, you can't apply for AEO, because your AEO is saying, well, AEOC is saying that you are familiar and compliant with customs paperwork, even though you've never done any. And customs are going to want to see how you're compliant, and you go, I don't know, I've never done any, but this is what I'm planning to do, and they just won't approve it. So you kind of have to wait to get over the line and then do some customs declarations and then say, right, now I'll apply for AEO. The good news is it's not holding you back. It's although I think revenue commissioners are pushing. Somebody said earlier on, revenue commissioners are pushing AEO in Ireland now and sort of promoting it, but I don't know for what end, because it's for next year almost. We need to get over this awful hump at the moment and then start laying in AEOs. I mean, if somebody said to me, look, we've got the 29th of March, but we have got this transition till the 1st of Jan, I would change the way I'm doing stuff today because I'd do it right. At the moment, it's proper smashing everything in the shop in order to buy the vase, you know? And it's, there's a better way of doing it. But at the moment, I just feel, and I know whenever you do that process of breaking everything on the way in and breaking everything on the way out, you always end up regretting it because, you know, a year down the line, you just think, should have done this better. Yeah? But we just don't have the time. We're just racing around like idiots at the moment. But yeah, AEO is going to hold you back. There's a lot of people like that have kind of, I'd almost get to the point of sort of framing it up, because the only bit that you're missing on your AEO at that piece, at that time, is the figures for your non-EU trade. Okay? And at some point, you'll be able to put those figures in. The process you should be working on now, really, is that, you know, documenting what am I going to do to control those goods. Then you can actually start doing that now. And that's a large part of the AEO piece in any case. Plus good practice, you know. I'm starting to put that, if I had my time at the moment to put things together properly, I'd be documenting those up more solidly and making them available to everybody, saying, look, this is my opinion, this is best practice on how to control goods. I get to a lot of importers where I actually go to their premises and say, yeah, do you import third country goods now? And they go, oh yeah, all this stuff. I said, well, how do you know it's cleared? And they go, how do I know it's cleared? Because it's here. No, that's the wrong answer. Right? I could definitely get it to here without clearing it. How do you know it's cleared? Oh, I've always thought if it got here, it must be cleared. But no, these are the types of things that we've got to make sure they're tracked, you know, and how accurate is the customs entry that's been done by your broker at Felixstowe? Very accurate. How do you know? Because he's a broker. Right, okay. And then when you start looking, and these compliance pieces are very important. How are you going to evaluate? Yeah, how do you know when that entry is right or wrong? And also, how do you know when it's done or not? You know, so it's those compliance pieces. But, you know, even if you can't have AEO today, start to build those files so that you're ready when you can.
Yes, because this together with, if the 29th of March, let's say we would actually have an abrupt entry into Brexit, would it mean which goods would actually be affected? Would be the ones on the date of the departure? Let's say if you leave Europe on the 29th, UK is still in the European Union, but is entering into the UK on the 30th.
I think I read somewhere that it was the date of departure. So providing it's left before that date, it will be okay.
So it's on the departure.
Sorry, somebody might know better.
Sorry about this. I asked this question yesterday to HMRC and they confirmed that it depends on the booking of the departure. So if it's booked on a flight that's due to arrive or leave before 11 o'clock in the evening, it will still be considered as EC goods. So it's the final mile. So that would be on the Eurotunnel or on a ferry. Does that help?
Yeah, I can see that. This will be fuzzy though. It will be very fuzzy. I mean, there's a difficulty when, like the Chinese stuff now, where people are saying, well, the boat's left for China and we don't know what the duty rate's going to be when it gets there. We're going to get to that stage where people are going to be saying, well, look, I've got a load for Turkey. You know, if we have this 11th hour deal, what happens to that load for Turkey that needs to leave on the Friday, and on the Thursday, and we might do a deal tomorrow? I can't actually physically do a document for that because it doesn't require a document. And customs won't endorse the document because it doesn't require a document. And yet, tomorrow it might require a document. Only now it's in Germany.
It's transition again, isn't it?
And there's got to be a bit of freedom within that. So, yeah. I think even that, customs have got to be a little bit lenient. It's a soft line, I think.
Got one last question.
So.
Yeah, just after some advice, really. What's your advice on, we have a truck consignment come from North Africa once a week on a EU R1. What's your sort of advice on your take on that?
Comes from or goes to?
Comes from Tunisia. Well, we have one pallet going out, one pallet coming in a week.
One?
One truckload.
Okay.
About 3 pallets out, 3 pallets in.
All on EU R1 at the moment?
Yeah. Out and in.
And requires import customs clearance?
Yep.
And export documentation?
Yeah.
100% no change.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's the same.
Yeah.
Where does it clear today?
Clears Dartford at the moment.
Oh, right, Davis Turner or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, same. Nothing changes. The only problem is your broker might be busy, but in theory, nothing changes at all, really. Actually, that's a good point. Nothing changes in terms of the customs process. Do we have an EFTA-style trade agreement with Tunisia? Yeah, I can see us mimicking that. There was a question I got asked the other day by somebody with citrus from Morocco. And he said, well, what will happen with the duty rate from my citrus from Morocco? We currently have a free trade deal with the EU. Yeah. I said, well, we'll probably keep the free trade deal because we don't want to disadvantage anybody. But we could end up in a situation where we honour the free trade deal with Tunisia or Morocco, but not the EU on which it's based. So suddenly, even like my citrus man from Morocco has suddenly got, his citrus can come in duty-free, but the stuff from Valencia can't, which is nuts. But it could happen that way. But in terms of your flows, we don't know. I mean, in theory, if we crash out with a no deal, that EFTA-style free trade deal with Tunisia is on the basis of the EU, and therefore we don't have that deal anymore. I'm not seeing them doing that deal though either. I mean, I know they've done the Swiss one. That's down to Liam Fox. I think we would initially let it carry on, but I don't know whether Tunisia would. I suppose they would. Yeah. Yeah, it is a bit really, but there's a 75 of these apparently. Yeah, with all the GSPs and everything, we're not sure how they're going to go. The Switzerland one was quite interesting for me because that creates a bit of a window on imports. Is that if it's not quite bedded in yet. I only got the email yesterday actually, but the Swiss deal apparently is that if we keep the Swiss deal on a transitional basis, then we can almost wash everything through Switzerland because Switzerland has a deal with the EU and therefore with Tunisia, probably. And then you've got a situation where you just go, well, actually, we'll just buy everything from Switzerland and everything will clear in Switzerland and come to us on an EUR1 and we've got to deal with Switzerland. It's nuts at the moment. You just got to hope that's why we end up with this transition period because it's questions like that where you can't honestly answer. I can tell you what the customs paperwork is, but I can't tell you whether or not the trade deal will even exist, which is mad. This is why we need this, even if we crash out no deal, we need a year to get to the point where we can actually say, I know what the paperwork is and I know what the free trade deal is. So, crazy, isn't it?
Okay, thank you.
Good.
We're going
No
to
problem.
finish there. So I'd like to thank Robert for his time today. Hopefully you're going home.
Thank you.
So Robert has created 2 guides, Importers and Exporters Guide, with a lot of useful information. You'll find that on the DB Schenker website. And if you do have any questions, there's also a contact form on the website. You can put your question forward and we will come back to you. We'd like to invite you to stay for coffee and pastries outside. There will be Schenker people around if you'd like to ask us any questions, and Robert also will be around if you do have any further questions. But lastly, we'd like to, on behalf of DB Schenker, thank you for your time and attending today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Erin Ralph and we've been coming to you live from Heathrow at the DB Schenker Brexit Forum 2019. I've got with us today UK and Ireland SMT members to tell us about how DB Schenker are preparing for Brexit. First off, I've got Ray Hennessy, CEO. Ray, what do you think about the presentation today?
The presentation is fantastic, great turnout from many customers, lots of questions and answers, and I think it's been great success, and I hope our customers are more informed of the challenges of the journey ahead.
Excellent. The question I've got for you is, how is DB Schenker preparing for Brexit, and what challenges do you think this will bring?
Well, I think the biggest challenge everyone is experiencing at the moment is the uncertainty of what Brexit is going to look like. Within Schenker, we've been working for over a year now on internal systems, trying to link our land systems throughout our different countries together with customs systems to make sure that the data that's required is available in the most automated way. Externally with our customers, we've been holding one-to-one meetings with many of them for many months right now, and an event like today gives everybody an opportunity to hear from an expert like Robert Hardy. So, we're really focused on supporting customers, and it's important for us, and we think we can add value to our customers. We've a lot of expertise here, and most of our trade is with non-EU at the moment, so we do a lot of import-export activity from third countries, so we can help and assist as that becomes a requirement for UK when it steps outside the EU.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. Right. Next, we've got Mike Holton, our Business Transformation and Special Projects Director. Question for you, Mike. Does DB Schenker have a strategy planned in case of a hard Brexit?
Thanks, Irm and DB do. Excuse me. We've been obviously planning for this for quite a number of months. We've had a European team in place looking at consignment volumes. Obviously, to recap on what a hard Brexit will be, it could result in the immediate placement of border controls, which would stem or possibly stem the flow of free flow of goods. To that end, we've been working with HMRC. We've been working internally in upskilling our customs teams. As Ray has just said, we're an international company. We have a vast amount of experience in dealing with imports and exports from third countries. But to that end, we have in place transit facilities to allow movement of goods to cross-border using our transit facilities. We have external and temporary storage facilities, ETSFs, where we can store under bond and clear using our deferment account. We have increased the value of our principal value on our deferment guarantees with the HMRC, which will allow for the facilitating increased values and exports to the European Union. So all told, the primary, I suppose, requirements we do need to put in place are capacities, which we have. We've upskilled. We have increased guarantees. We have systems and transit procedures in place, and all told, pretty well prepared, we feel, at this point.
Absolutely. Sounds like we're well prepared. Next up, Julie Hurd, our Chief Commercial Officer. How are DB Schenker supporting their customers?
Okay, so we are constantly assessing our customers' businesses and ensuring that we provide information and how that would impact them and their business, but also looking at it from an international trade point of view. We're advising customers on an individual basis also by summarising and evaluating their way that their goods move. We've also created a new web page on our website, which gives useful information to customers, but also covers the four main areas of goods, services, capital, and people. Within that, we've also put information about HMRC and gov.uk. So we're just really trying to make sure that customers have the full amount of information that will help them to prepare moving forward after the 29th of March.
Thank you very much, Julie. Neil, our Branch and Operations Director, do you have any specific recommendations for our customers?
Well, I think the most important thing, is the avail of information. And we watched Robert here today, and one of the first things he said was, let's do away with the myth and let's talk about facts. And I think for any of our customers to understand their business completely and then try to ascertain what parts of the information that they need that, I suppose, reflect their own businesses. And that is the most important thing I could say to them in terms of specifics. We hear a lot of jargon, we hear a lot of things that we wouldn't have heard before today, and it's to realise what of those impact our own businesses and what we can move forward. And I think we're here today, we're streaming this live. It is going to be up on our website, as you say. The HMRC have a lot of preparation packs done for businesses. Avail of as much information as you can. Deal with the facts, and if there's anything, obviously, we as the alleged experts in our field, we can come in then and help specifically to that business. And I think, just information. That's the thing I would urge our customers to avail of. So, yeah.
Okay, information is the key here. All right, Adrian, Ocean Director. Does DB Schenker offer alternative solutions?
Well, yes. For a couple of years now, we've offered, as part of our ocean freight portfolio, a product to bring cargo by rail, mainly from China, but other Asian countries. That's for FCL and LCL. So we've started to explore options now from Europe, because the transit through China or from China goes through Europe through various hubs. So we've looked for a number of major blue chip household name companies in the UK, options of full trains from Europe to inland destinations in the UK. So obviously that will benefit from a point of view of any possible congestion at the ports, and also that we'll be able to offer inland customs clearance facilities as well. So yes, I think some good options there.
All right, thanks very much to all of you for joining us today, and we hope the event has been very useful to you. There's more information on our website, there's official government guidance and news, and you can always contact us through our contact form. Thank you very much for joining us today. Goodbye.